In 2024, I introduce you to Shelve It or Scrap It, a monthly reading challenge where I read randomly selected books from these stacks on the floor of my library. The goal was to get all of the books from the floor onto my shelves or scrapped into my unhaul pile by the end of the year. We started 2024 with 70 books in the stacks, but despite shelving 35 books and scrapping 57 books throughout the year, holding 64 less books than in 2023 and thus making a positive dent in my own TBR as a whole, we actually ended the year with one more book in the stacks than when we started. So in 2025, I have to up my game. The rules remain the same, but I now have to read the same amount of books per episode as I've hauled in the previous month, so that by the end of this year, I will hopefully reach my ultimate goal of getting all of the stacks off the floor and into a proper home, either on my shelves or on somebody else's. In episode 15, I scrapped 11 books and I did not shelve any, and I am going to be starting episode 16 with 71 books in the stacks. Hello my guys, welcome back to episode 16 of Shelve It or Scrap It, the vlog series where I try and get this overspill of books behind me into a new home on my bookshelves through any means possible. Now, if this is the first ever time you are encountering this series, I will of course put the playlist in the description box which contains the past 15 episodes for you to catch up at your leisure. But for those of you who are up to speed, yes, I will start by addressing the elephant in the room. We have 71 books in the stacks now. That is the exact same amount that we started 2025 on, and also is one more than we started this entire project on in 2024. I am choosing not to be alarmed, and I'm choosing to live in denial and still believe that at some point in my future I can achieve my goal of getting all of these books off the floor and either onto my shelves or into a new home on somebody else's. But there is kind of a reason for it. So because I've ended up behind on content a little bit because I was traveling in April, I've essentially ended up with 2 months worth of books being added to the stacks in between these 2 episodes instead of just one. So instead of only having my March unboxing and any books that I hauled in March added to the stacks, I also have the books that I hauled in April and May, and also my April unboxing is all in there as well. I also did a 4-part vlog series on my channel called The Romantasy Rundown, and all of the books that I read for that series I had been collecting over a year and keeping to one side but not on shelves. And so now that that project is resolved, I think I had 4 books left over at the end of it that needed shelving, and so books have had to come off shelves so that those red books could go on, and then those books have been added to the stacks as well, which is why we have a big increase. But what I'm anticipating is that between this episode and the next, or between those 2 episodes, there shouldn't really be anything added because I'm trying to catch up rapid fire with the episode that I've ended up behind on, if that makes sense. But anyway, as per usual, we are going to be trying to read, allegedly, hang on, we are going to be trying to read the same amount of books that I hauled the month previous. So this episode should be May's episode. And according to my spreadsheet, I hauled 10 books in April, just like I did in March, and 9 of them were ones that were in my March unboxing, and one of them is a Mandarin edition of one of my favorite books that I picked up as my souvenir book while I was in China. Now, the reason why I hold so much in April is because I had pre-ordered a bunch of like special edition sequels or special editions of books that I'd maybe already read, and they all came in at once, which I wasn't anticipating, which is why April got out of hand. And you know, the last episode was big. It was long. It was 2.5 hours. We had 10 books. I read most of them. I didn't really DNF anything. And you know what? It was a great episode. I'm glad you all enjoyed it. I enjoyed it as well. However, I don't feel like I can do a 10-book episode every month. And next month, the next episode is not, because I did not haul 10 books in May, thankfully. But it took me a long time to make last month's episode. And if I don't want to be behind forever, I can't do back-to-back 10-book episodes. But I am not going back on my promise to balance the books that I'm reading for Shelve It or Scrap It, or featuring in Shelve It or Scrap It, with the ones I've hauled the month previous. So instead of reading 10 books in this video, I'm actually hoping to double the stakes instead. So what I do have is 25 authors in this jar, and I own at least 2 books by each of these 25 authors. Throughout this video, I'm going to be pulling them out of this jar at random, and I will have to select a book that I own by them to read. If I do not like that book, I have to unhaul everything that I have by them that I haven't read. So the reason why the stakes are high are obviously like not all books are equal. Like there are books by some of my favorite authors, by Brandon Sanderson, that I don't like, by J. Kristoff that I don't like, Sarah J. Maas. She has books that I do not like. So I could theoretically be missing out on an author's best work if I make the wrong decision when I'm sampling these books. However, I do feel like that is the exception and it is unlikely. Typically with my book buying habits these days, if I have a book by an author, like in my Our Fantasy Bingo TBR, I was talking about The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. It's a book that I'm interested in, but I already own Foundry Side, so I don't want to buy The Tainted Cup. However, back in the day, I used to buy the majority of my books secondhand, so I would pick up what I could get. If I found books by authors who I'd heard good things about and the book was £1, I was going to get them regardless of if I already had books by that author at home. So there are two different types of books, I guess, or authors in this video. There are ones where I have intentionally bought more than one book by the same author. An example of this is Anne Rice. I have Interview with the Vampire and I have the first book in the Mayfair Witches series. If I read one of these and I don't like it, I'm going to unhaul both of them, even though I bought them because I was interested in this author and I wanted to try both of them. On the flip side of that, I have authors like Sue Lynn Tan, where I only own more than one book by Sue Lynn Tan because they are a Fairy Loot favourite author and I am a rep for all of the Fairy Loot boxes, so I have both Immortal and the Daughter of the Moon Goddess. So there are exceptions to this. There is one notable exception, and that is that if I have more than one book in one series by an author, then it doesn't count. So for example, Falling Kingdoms by Morgan Rhodes. I have 5 books in the Falling Kingdoms series, but I have never read anything by Morgan Rhodes, but because it's all the same thing, it's all the same series, it is not counting for this challenge. Now, while authors don't count if I own just more than one book in the same series, if I own more than one book in different series set in the same world, as I do with Stephanie Garber and Caraval and Once Upon a Broken Heart, that still counts. And the way that we're going to pick which book I read by each author, we're going to find out as we pick them. So this could backfire on me rapidly. I could read some really anticipated books and end up having to unhaul them, or I could end up sampling a bunch of authors who have fallen into my library by chance and decide that they're not for me, which is kind of what I'm hoping is going to happen. So my idea with this, when I thought it up, was that as an example, instead of having to read 10 books, I would read 5 books by 5 different authors where I own 2 books by each of them, and I would unhaul 10 books. And that is how we would get to 10. I know that even for me, this is a little convoluted, and I'm going to be honest, we are partially going to be winging it to kind of see how we make up the 10 books. But I thought this would be exciting because the stakes are a little bit higher. We're not only pulling from the stacks, we're probably predominantly going to be pulling from shelves. And I have written down every single author, no matter how long I've had them, no matter where they're shelved, no matter whether they're on the shelves or in the stacks, every single author where I own more than one book. And there are some really bad ones in here, guys. So let's see what we're gonna get. My absolute worst one that we could get, I think, is Christina Lauren, because I own 6 standalone romances from Christina Lauren. What if I pick the wrong one? What if I pick the wrong one? We might have to find out in this episode, but I'm gonna go for this one. I'm so scared. Okay, so our first author, I have spelt this wrong, I do know that, but the first author is Kayn Baron, and I'm actually really glad that Kayn Baron came out, because when I was explaining what I was doing to my friends, this is the author that I was using as an example. Like, this challenge was created for Kayn Baron. So the first of the Kayn Baron books I own actually is in the stack, so we'll get that one out first. I really don't want to though, because it is quite far down here. It is there. The stacks are actually getting so unruly at the minute that they are at risk of falling over, and I think I'm gonna have to introduce a 4th pile again. Okay, so my first Kayn Baron book that I own is Sleep Like Death. This one was a pretty recent, I think, Fairy Loot book. It's a YA Fairy Loot book from July 2024, and it is a fairy tale retelling, which I think Kayn Baron is pretty well known for, and I'm pretty sure that this one is a standalone. So I know the book that I'm the most familiar with, I think Kayn Baron's potentially most popular book, is Cinderella is Dead, which is a Cinderella retelling. She did actually write a slasher. I can't remember what it was called. You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight. If there was any Kayn Baron book that I was truly interested in picking up, it would be You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight, but unfortunately that is not one that I have. So this one is a Snow White retelling. Then the other Kayn Baron book I own, I'm pretty sure is in here. There she is. This Poison Heart. So this one is a much older Kayn Baron book. This one is an Illumicrate book, and I haven't had Illumicrate in years. So I do actually still have the cards in it. This is from July 2021, and I'm pretty sure that this one is the first book in a series. I actually think, did I not put this on my Our Fantasy Bingo TBR? That would be great news if I did. I'm sure I used it to like randomly fulfill a prompt as well, because there's no way that I would have picked that like with intent to read it anytime soon, because I've had this book for years and I barely ever think of it. Okay, I do have this in for an Our Fantasy Bingo prompt. I have this one in for the book club or read along prompt, which is to read any book that has ever been selected for one of the Our Fantasy Bingo book clubs or read alongs, which actually is one that I'm very good at fulfilling by chance anyway, because I just read so many like quite popular fantasy releases. But this is the one I selected, so this would be a great contender. Just because of that, it would fulfill like a reasonably difficult prompt on Our Fantasy Bingo. This one I'm pretty sure is about a girl who is left an estate. Her family's left an estate by her aunt when she dies, and I think there's like a greenhouse full of poison or something. A walled garden filled with the deadliest botanicals in the world. So of these two, I've got to be honest, I don't feel like there's one that is especially pulling me towards it. I think just because I do have quite an aversion to fairy tales and fairy tale retellings at the minute, like I'm not really jiving with them. So I feel like I am a little bit more drawn towards this Poison Heart. But I actually think I'm going to look up the Goodreads ratings, because what I really want to do for all of these authors is give myself the best chance of enjoying them. I don't want to be reading their worst work when we have all of the books that I own by them on the line. I want to be giving them the best chance to impress me. So the average rating on this one is 4.1. That's actually pretty high. And the average rating for Sleep Like Death is 3.4. So I think we have a clear winner here. This one is the most liked one, and it is also the one that I personally was drawn to a little bit more anyway, and it does fulfill that Our Fantasy Bingo TBR prompt. The risk we have here though is like if I'm picking the best and I really enjoy it, it does not mean that I'm going to enjoy the other books by this author, because I think what we're going to do is if I enjoy a book and I shelve it, then that means that that author has earned their place on my shelves. So I don't have to go on and continue and read anything else by them. It just means that they are no longer a contender for this like double stake round of Shelve It or Scrap It, I guess. I just got back from a pretty long day out. I was supposed to be going to the Callie Hart event in Leeds. However, it was cancelled sadly. I think they said due to illness it has been postponed until August. So I still ended up going out and going into Leeds because it's my friend's birthday later in the week. So I gave him his gifts. We went for dinner, all that jazz. And I've just got home. I'm on the couch ready to rot with some Vanderpump Rules. But I thought that I should come and talk to you guys about this Poison Heart before I truly settled into that and took my pants off, because I don't want to wear a waistband anymore, because I am quite a bit of the way into it. I read some in the car on the way to and from Leeds because I was the passenger princess this time around. But I'm 170 pages in, so I'm not quite halfway, but I am getting there. And guys, I really like this. I'm having a really good time, and I'm shocked because, like I said, Kayn Baron is the author that I have been using as an example when I've been talking to my friends about my idea for this episode. And the reason why is because these were just completely unappealing to me. Like the Kayn Baron books seemed like very average, middle of the road YA, and not the kind of thing that I'm typically into anymore. Like fairy tale retellings especially, but also young adult fantasy in general, unless it is on the older side. Things that seem to transcend age range a little bit, so were like peak series of their time, I tend to still potentially enjoy. But generally YA fantasy, it's not my favorite thing anymore for the most part. There are outliers, there's always outliers, but I'm actually shocked at how much I'm enjoying this one. So we're following a girl in this who's called, I'm not really sure how to pronounce her name, everybody calls her Brie, but it is Briaces. Briseis. It's a Greek name, and Greek mythology does tie into this story a little bit. It's not super present right now aside from references, but I do think it is going to come to the forefront a little bit later in the book or a little bit later in the series. Briseis. I'm going to call her Brie, actually. But anyway, Brie lives in Brooklyn with her parents who run a flower shop, and she has this power that she can't explain where plants are drawn to her. So when she's walking down the street, trees bend, they lean towards her, like weeds will start growing towards her, and it's something that she has to concentrate really hard to subdue. Like she has to like put blinders on and ignore all of the greenery around her so that it doesn't kind of go out of control and become really noticeable, because this is a contemporary world, like people generally don't have magical abilities. And one day, because she's adopted, she gets a knock on her door, or her parents do, from this estate manager that tells her that her birth mother's sister has left her an estate. And she Googles it briefly and she's like, well, this could mean anything from like a big sprawling manor to a box of old junk. So she decides to go ahead with her parents and check it out. And her aunt has actually left her this like sprawling manor house in upstate New York, which is surrounded by forest and has, I think it's sat on like 40 acres of land. So it's a little bit dusty. It's a little bit different from what they're used to being from the city, but they decide to lean into it and try it out and see if this could be a new home for them, because the rent keeps rising on the apartment that they live in, on the shop that they run, and they are struggling to make ends meet at this point. So the first thing that they really notice when they're exploring the house is that there is this enormous apothecary in there. And when Brie is going through letters that her aunt has left her, she also discovers this really beautiful garden where her family members, her previous family members, have been cultivating plants to stock the apothecary, and also a poison greenhouse. Now, part of Brie's power is actually that she is immune to poison, and I don't understand the scope of the plot right now, because obviously I read the synopsis and it's like, okay, this girl gets left this poison garden and what? Like, and what? But I do think, like I said, I think that this is mythological in origin, and based on where the story is going, I have a feeling that it is going to be something to do with Greek goddesses, specific Greek goddesses, and 6 magical, mystical, mythological seeds. I think that the scope of the story is going to go into hunting them down for some reason, and we're starting off with Brie learning her biological family history, unlocking the secrets of this power that she has, figuring out that there's other people like her out there and that this is like a family trait, and stepping into this role in her history, because allegedly, apparently, people keep saying that the apothecary is really special to this town, and the particular gifts that the woman, well, I say the women of this family, I only know of 3 characters from this family that are all women, have the ability, this ability to nurture plants, which really helps them to produce more quality ingredients for this apothecary, which helps the community, because I don't know who the community are, whether it's the town, whether it's a magical community. I don't really know what's going on here, but I really like the writing. It's nothing amazing, it's nothing unique, I want to say, but I feel like the way that Kayn Baron has approached the world building in here, and the way that I feel like she's done a lot of research into the plants for this book, is really adding a level of richness to this story, because I'm absorbed. Like I said, read the synopsis, this girl is left in a state in a will with a poison greenhouse, but I'm having a great time as she explores her poison greenhouse. I am genuinely surprised. I'm pleasantly surprised that I'm having such a good time with this. I think it's a little bit different, and I appreciate the slow pacing, because I do think, as I said, that the story is going to end up a little bit more elaborate, especially because this is a series. I don't know whether it is 2 books or 3 books or what the deal is, but I do know there's more to this story, assumedly following the same character. I mean, I don't know any different, but I appreciate the slow introduction to this story, and I'm excited to see where it goes, because like I said, I do have an inkling, but I don't know that for sure. That's just based on kind of the information that I've gathered so far. This is just a super quick update to let you guys know that I'm nearly done with this Poison Heart. I'm 318 pages into it, out of 370, so I really don't have too much to go. I'm having an editing day today. I'm going to read like another chapter while my files are transferring, and then I'm going to edit my video, and while it's exporting, I'm going to be finishing this one. And I'm having a great time with it, and while I'm reading it, I can kind of see the flaws in it. You know, like when sometimes a book works for you and it doesn't really make sense that it does, because I definitely think it's good, but I also don't think that there's a great deal that differentiates this from a lot of young adult fantasy that I've read, which usually doesn't work for me. But in this instance, I'm having a great time. Like I don't know if we're setting up a love triangle, but we have two friends that our main character has made within this like town that she's moved to, and she only feels romantically towards one of them, but I'm not sure the one that she doesn't feel romantically towards, I'm not sure whether they get that or whether they are kind of expecting a little bit more from the relationship. But just the way that it's set up to so obviously lean one way, I do think implies something that is going to be coming up in the plot, which I'll be interested to see if I'm right about that actually. So there are lots of things in here, like story-wise, that I feel are quite obvious. Like they're not too deep, they're not too complex. They seem to very clearly be steering the reader in a certain direction, which is fine, but typically for me, I tend to enjoy plots that keep me guessing a little bit more so that I don't obviously know what's coming up. Like things being predictable is not necessarily a bad thing. It kind of depends what you're in the story for, but I find that I lose compulsion. Like I'm not as tuned into the book and eager to continue on if I can predict what's coming, but that predictability that I'm seeing in this is not killing the story for me. I'm still having a great time. It's a little bit cheesy as well. Like the relationship that the main character has with her adoptive mothers is great. Like it's super supportive and I'm really enjoying seeing that. But sometimes the way that they can behave towards her or things that they say to each other are a little bit cheesy and a little bit cringe, and I don't even mind that. Like I'm still having a really good time. I think part of the reason why I'm enjoying this is because I wouldn't necessarily say it has a gothic atmosphere. Like I wouldn't say that it's a gothic book, but I do think that the setting of this house that our main character Brie has inherited definitely leans a little gothic, with this sprawling estate that's covered in dust and has like many secrets to uncover, as well as the secrets of her family tree that she's uncovering along the way as she is exploring this house and these gardens. And like I said, I am a sucker for a young adult fantasy story that has like an occult fantastical kind of element to it, which this does. I don't know why it works for me so well in YA fantasy, whereas typically, you know what, I don't think I've read many adult fantasies that fall into that are very much like a contemporary story with more occult magic. I feel like when I read it in an adult setting, it tends to be more paranormal or urban fantasy leaning. So let me know if you have any recommendations for that within adult fantasy, because I'm sure I must have read something, but I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I guess The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon counts, but I guess that while it does definitely have that occult like psychic element to the magic that is the basis of the magic, it's also incredibly complex and political and has a whole other fantastical element to it as well. So I think it's a little bit more complex than what I typically see in young adult fantasy that I'm enjoying. I'm thinking of like The Devouring Grey, The Ravens by Danielle Page, and I always forget, is it Kira Cass? It's like a sorority of witches. There's also All of Us Villains by C.L. Herman and Amanda Foody. Like those kinds of stories is what this is also kind of reminiscent of, although I do feel like those ones lean a little bit more into the spooky atmosphere than this Poison Heart is, which is leaning a little bit just slightly more into a traditional YA fantasy kind of story. So I'm having a great time. I mean, it doesn't bode well because then I'm going to want the sequel. I don't even know if I can find a hardback of the sequel, because in the UK I'm sure it would have been published in a paperback. I don't have a hope of finding an Illumicrate edition of it. Like that's probably outside of my price range for my level of investment and wanting to invest in the sequel of this book. So I don't know how. I mean, I can read it on Libby. I've checked and it is available, but if I'm going to be shelving this book, which at this point I very well might, I am also going to want a physical copy of the sequel as well. Sorry, there's a massive fucking spider on the wall. This was literally about to be the end of my clip as well. I have these horrible spiders in my house that are like super spindly and gross. Oh my god, it's moving so fast. Because where are you? I need rescuing. I finished this Poison Heart and I did continue to enjoy it to the end. I do think that the end of this book though is its weakest part. I think it was the penultimate chapter in here that was a little bit of a chaotic mess, and I don't think that transitioning between events within a scene is Kayn Baron's strong point. I mean, this is an older book of hers, so maybe that's different now, but during kind of like the high action scenes at the height of the conflict in this book, it very much felt like and then this happened, suddenly this happened, over here there was a crash, almost like a list of events happening back to back, which was a little bit jarring and a little bit messy, I feel. I am also a little bit concerned about the sequel to this book because I do know it's only a duology. I don't know how big the second book is, but I am anticipating, with it being YA, that it's going to be a similar length to book one, and I feel like the direction where the sequel is going is a little bit more ambitious on the fantastical front than this first installment was. However, we did have some plot developments right at the end of this book that narrow the scope of book two a little bit, which I actually do think is going to be a good thing, and I am at this point still interested in picking up the sequel. It was not a perfect book by any means though, and I did definitely notice that the foreshadowing in here was very clunky, and our main character at a lot of points throughout this book was very slow on the uptake to service the plot. Like, she was walking around with blinders on essentially and ignoring like very obvious suspicious behavior and red flags that I was very obviously picking up, so that it would serve the plot later down the line when she was maybe surprised by certain reveals and plot events that I did find to be very predictable. I did, however, end up giving this one 4 stars, mainly because of how engrossed I was in it, how thoroughly compelled I was throughout this story. Like, I enjoyed my time reading this in a way that I don't feel like I typically enjoy reading YA fantasy anymore, even though I could see some of these bigger plot points come in a mile off, even though some of the dialogue was a little bit cheesy, we could have had more development in areas. I really enjoyed this one. I'm not sure what it was about it that really drew me in, especially because on the surface in the synopsis of this, not something that I anticipated really enjoying. And Kayn Baron as well was the author that I've said twice, I've been using her as an example when describing this challenge to my friends. She was also one of the main authors that spurred on this challenge, where I was thinking, okay, we can do 2 birds with 1 stone here, because I'm not anticipating loving Kayn Baron. Like, these synopses do not seem like the kind of things that I would typically enjoy, and I did. And I do get a lot of questions, especially on Shelve It or Scrap It, like, if you're saying that you don't like these books, if you're saying that it's not for you, if you're saying you don't like these tropes and you don't like this certain thing, like, why do you still have these books? Why don't you just unhaul them? Because sometimes I'm wrong, and I think it would be a shame to unhaul things unread. I mean, I do it sometimes, we all do it sometimes. You cut your losses, it's unlikely you're going to like a thing, and you unhaul it, and I feel very comfortable doing that. But this is a book that I did thoroughly enjoy, that otherwise, like, if it had come down to it and you told me that by tomorrow I had to have all of my books on shelves, I can pretty much guarantee that this would have been one that was unhauled, and that would have been a shame. So now we have to answer the question, like, what are we doing with these? Because I do very much want to shelve this one. However, this is a book that came off my shelves, so I don't have to rearrange anything. This can go directly back into the slot that it came out of. But now what do I do with this? Because I definitely did anticipate going into this, picking Kayn Baron out, I anticipated these being scraps, and I also did not anticipate, with my rate of DNFs and unhauling and scrapping, I did not anticipate my first book straight out the gate being a shelve. So I think what we're going to have to do is we're just going to have to put this back where we found it from. Yes, Kayn Baron has now earned a place on my shelves, but I think I am just going to put this back in the stacks so that it is eligible to be shelved at a later date or for further episodes of Shelve It or Scrap It. Because realistically, if it was the other way around, if I was now having to shelve this having enjoyed it, this would have just gone back to its slot on the shelves anyway. So I feel like just because this is in the stacks doesn't mean that I shouldn't do it the other way around. It does, however, mean that in terms of Shelve It or Scrap It, we haven't accomplished anything. That's not true. I have read a book that has been on my TBR for a really long time. It's been sat on my shelves for 4 years, and that is definitely an achievement and not something to be disregarded. It's just in terms of Shelve It or Scrap It, the numbers were balancing in the stacks. This didn't really do anything, so I'm going to pop these into their homes and we're going to go back to the jar, I guess. I have changed my mind a little bit because I am trying to swap out a lot of the books I have downstairs that I haven't read for ones that I have, like, obviously as I'm reading things. So I'm actually going to put this Poison Heart on one of these shelves. So alphabetically should go actually right at the top. So if we remove Wicked Fox and we pop this Poison Heart in instead, and then hopefully I can find a place for Wicked Fox upstairs where I took this Poison Heart from. This is going to be a little bit of a tighter fit than I originally anticipated, but I'm committing to it. These stacks are kind of unsafe at the minute. Oh well, I have now started like a third hardback stack as well, because I really just can't go any taller than this, and they're also not like super stable. Okay, back to the jar. Let's see what's coming up next. Let's go for this one. I'm scared. Anna Huang. Oh. Okay, don't know how I feel about this one. So my two books by Miss Anna Huang, the first one is of course the classic, the original, the most popular, Twisted Love. And the second one is King of Wrath, which is a much newer release. So the first issue I'm having immediately with these two is that I cannot remember if the Kings of Sin series is a spin-off from the Twisted series, so I'm going to have to look into that. It says that the Kings of Sin series and the Twisted series are a series of interconnected standalones. It's actually really cool that they do say that, like right in the first page of the book. These are signed. This one's personalized. This one's just signed. Oh no. So they are connected. This one is a spin-off series set in the same universe as this one. I don't think it really matters which one you read in terms of chronology of the series, because they're all like interconnected standalones. It's the kind of thing where like you'll get the Easter eggs if you read them in order, but you don't actually have to. And because I am somebody who likes to read things in their proper order, that means that straight up I'm probably going to be going with Twisted Love. I do just want to check out the ratings on these. I know Anna Huang is an incredibly popular romance author, so a lot of people love her, but I also know a lot of people really dislike this book and find the romance, I think it's the guy, that they find insufferable. That being said, I love an angsty good time, so just because it's like bad and maybe he's a bit toxic doesn't mean that I actually won't enjoy this book. But I don't think there's any predicting whether I will or not without just trying it for myself. This is one of the cases of authors in the jar as well, where I have more than one book by Anna Huang kind of on purpose. Actually, you know, it is more of an accident, but it is like I picked up Twisted Love intentionally because I expect to enjoy it. And this one was actually gifted to me by Madison from Madison Fox when I visited her in New York 2 years ago. So they have like kind of entered my library intentionally, but Twisted Love has a 3.72 rating. For a romance, that's not amazing, but based on Anna Huang being an author that found a lot of hype through like TikTok and has then obviously become more popular, and more people who wouldn't necessarily have picked up Anna Huang before have now read Anna Huang, it does kind of make sense. And King of Wrath it seems to be the better book at 4.05. Anna Huang has written a lot of books, I think, in between these two, so maybe it's just that this one is actually genuinely better than Twisted Love. I don't think it's too much of a case of like only people who love this series have read this series, because I don't think the connection is going to be super prominent, but it does worry me that for the sake of chronology, I'm going to be starting with this one. Should I start with this one? I feel like I should. I mean, hopefully it'll at least be an angsty good time, but I really like the tagline. It says he has a heart of ice, but for her, he would burn the world. Oh, it's a brother's best friend romance. Okay. It seems like he's a little bit of a bad boy with a tortured past, which honestly, I can be a sucker for that. So yes, my final answer is I'm going to be trying Twisted Love. This could literally go either way. I cannot predict it because I haven't even sampled Anna Huang's writing before, but I hope this goes well, even though if it does, in terms of Shelve It or Scrap It, it will mean absolutely nothing. So I'm officially past the 100 page mark now in Twisted Love. I'm 112 pages into it, which I think is around a third of the way through. So progress has been good and I'm not hating it. I actually really like the writing style. It is a lot better written than I actually expected it to be and is proven to be pretty compulsively readable. I do like the main character so far. I would say my issue with it is that I don't really care about the romance. The love interest isn't really doing it for me. And when we're talking about a romance that is kind of pretty important. But in terms of the plot, we are following this girl called Eva, whose brother is going to be working abroad for a year. He's gone to Central America. So he asks his best friend, who's this like icy cold millionaire. I don't think he's a billionaire. I think he's a millionaire, to look after her while he's away. And he takes his job very seriously. A little too seriously, in my opinion, given that he says, like, one of the first things he says is that he has no interest in her and she also has no interest in him. No real ambivalence between them. Like, they're kind of intense, and even though it's not necessarily, there's a little bit of lust involved, but like their intentions aren't necessarily romantic. They're behaving in ways that does not indicate like a low level of feeling, because even in terms of him being her brother's best friend, they haven't had a lot of interaction. She kind of annoys him because she's so bubbly and outgoing and he's so kind of like cold and moody. So there's no real reason, aside from the fact that he promised her brother that he'll look after her, for him to go so hard in like every instance. Because one of the like main flaws I've seen, or one of the main criticisms I've seen of this book, is how possessive the male main character is. And I get it. He is overprotective. He steps into situations that he has no right to and tells the main character like what she can and can't do. And I think that is kind of why he's not doing it for me, especially because it is so frequent throughout the book. It's not kind of like one instance. It's like he's not just stepping in to protect her when she needs it. He's also very much telling her what she is and is not allowed to do when she is doing things that are perfectly safe that she has decided she would like to do. And I think that is my issue with him. But also, like, I think I would be more willing to like roll with it if I felt any kind of chemistry between them, which I don't really. So I feel like my feelings on this are going to be quite similar to the Sophie Lark books that I've read, in that I really enjoy the writing style and I love that the books are compulsively readable, really quick to read, but I don't actually care too much about the romance, so they end up being like quite enjoyable reads in the moment for me. But in terms of like romances that stick with me, romances that I really think about often and really like the romantic elements of, like, they're not really hitting that mark for me. And that kind of seems to be the way that Twisted Love is going right now. There is still plenty of time for it to change my mind, and I'll be honest, I've been a little bit distracted when I've been reading it, so I haven't been as absorbed as I maybe could be, which I am hoping to rectify, fingers crossed, throughout the rest of the book. I really need to go and get my workout in because I'm doing sprints with my patrons tonight, so if I don't do it now, essentially it's not getting done. But I did need to come and give you guys some terrible news that's not completely terrible, and don't worry, it's not about Twisted Love. Everything is going fine with that right now. I'm about 40 to 50% of the way through, I think. And the terrible news is that I have accidentally hauled some books, and it is an accident, okay? I'm not being held accountable to this, because I received a PR package from Penguin Michael Joseph this morning, and I did know that I was going to receive something from Penguin Michael Joseph because I'm one of their Siren VIPs for 2025, which is kind of like a rep, so it means that I'll receive like new releases, maybe arcs, maybe attend some events, that kind of thing, which I'm so grateful to Penguin Michael Joseph for reaching out to me and offering me this opportunity. It does throw a little bit of a spanner in the works though, because I obviously was aware that at some point they were going to send me some books. I did not know I was going to receive a box with 4 books in it this morning. So I actually was pretty confident about the amount of books hauled this month, and I was like, we are never going to have another 10 book episode again. This bumps my books hauled for June up to 10, and it's the 5th. The 5th of June right now. So I am going to show you what Penguin Michael Joseph sent my way. I am really excited for especially one of these, but there's also some contemporary romance in here that's really exciting as well. So the one that I was actually hoping that they were going to send me is Shield of Sparrows by Devney Perry. I've heard really good things about Devney Perry, so I've been keeping an eye on this release. Like, look how many books Devney Perry has. I'm excited to see if they're an author for me. I believe that they are an indie author. I'm assuming that this is the first book in a series. It's a romantasy series, and it's following, I think she's a princess, and she ends up on some sort of mission with a warrior where she's like gone against her will. She's part of some sort of blood pact that she didn't want to be a part of, and I think there's some sort of like arranged or forced marriage in there as well. Also on the fantasy romance front, we have Lady of the Lake by Jean Menzies, which is a sapphic Arthurian legend retelling, which I do like Arthurian legend in theory. Like, I find it interesting in terms of the legend itself. I I just have yet to find a retelling of it that works for me, but hopefully this one will be the one, because Jean as well, if you weren't aware, is a booktuber, one of the like OG UK booktubers. Actually, her channel is Jean's Thoughts now, but I think it used to be Jean's Bookish Thoughts. And then the two contemporary romances, we have Hosher in the Hamptons. This one is a sapphic one about a girl who somebody writes a scathing expose that sends her like fleeing out of New York City to the Hamptons, and then she finds herself drawn to the woman who wrote the expose that ruined her life, and I am assuming it is a romance between them. And then we also have One Golden Summer by Carly Fortune, which I think this is giving Taylor Jenkins Reid vibes, especially in the cover. And this one is about a woman who goes back to the lake where she grew up. Like, I think she like spent her summers there, and because she's looking after her grandmother, and she goes back as an adult and she meets the man who she took a photograph of many years ago that launched her photography career, which, I mean, considering his photograph launched her career, I'm assuming she's a photographer. And I think that they kind of rekindle a relationship or develop a relationship from there. So considering we are getting into summer now and I'm going to Zanzibar in July, I don't have any kind of TBR set for that. And aside from things that are left over in terms of like my Patreon picks and stuff that I might have left to get to, I don't think I have a whole ton of things specifically I have to read throughout the beginning of July. So I think in terms of Zanzibar, I am actually going to try and take some summer romances. So these would definitely be perfect for that. And then these are also great additions to my TBR. So thank you very much to Penguin Michael Joseph. I am very, very grateful for this wonderful, beautiful box of books that you sent me to stock my summer reading. It does just now mean that in August, or July/August, whenever the episode gets made, I'm now gonna have to read 10 books again, which is great news for you guys, because I know the longer these episodes are, the more you enjoy them. I am looking a little bit disheveled today because my main plan of this afternoon is to tidy and clean this room, and I was gonna go for a run so I could wash my hair, but the weather is not great today, so I might see if I can go for a run tomorrow morning and wash my hair and reset it and restyle it then. But I wanted to bring you guys an update on Twisted Love before I finished it, because I am now 264 pages in, out of 345 actually, because the end of this book, the last 20 pages I think, is a section, like the first chapter of book 2, and I almost DNF'd this yesterday when I was doing sprints with my patrons. It was around the point where the smut came in actually, which going into this book I did not know how smutty Anna Huang's books were going to be. I anticipated a level of smut, but on the chili pepper scale, like from a 1 to a 5, like I had no idea where it was gonna fall. I just anticipated like some smutty content, and it's not overbearing throughout here at all. There's actually more plot than I anticipated in this book when you get into the second half, but the smut does start to come in around halfway through. And my issue with this book still is that I don't really love the romance. Like, I don't care for the love interest, and when you are talking about a romance, that's obviously quite integral. So I was tempted to DNF, because it's like, if I'm not vibing with the romance, even though I actually really like the writing style in here, is there any point in pushing through a romance if you don't like the romance? But saying that, I am glad that I did. My patrons were like, why don't we had a 25-minute sprint, so they were like, why don't you just give it this one sprint? If you still don't want to read it, then DNF. And it actually got interesting at that point. So I definitely think the second half of this book, or should I say the third quarter of this book, has been better. The plot is a little bit far-fetched. It is your typical like billionaire/mafia romance type plot. We have revenge missions, very much does actually remind me in plot of the second book in the Brutal Birthright series by Sophie Lark. Stolen Heir is the second book in that series. It has a very similar plot line, and while I would say it is a little bit far-fetched, I was actually surprised by one of the plot twists in here, which there are two different types of plot twists in the world, okay? There's plot twists that you don't see coming because they're very cleverly plotted, and then there's plot twists that you don't see coming because they don't necessarily make sense, or the author hasn't laid any groundwork. I feel like this is a bit of a middle ground. Like, I wasn't expecting a plot twist in here because I wasn't actually expecting much of a plot, so that is the main reason why it took me by surprise. And there is actually one plot twist that comes a little bit later in this book that I could see from like the very first chapter, like where certain characters were introduced. So it's not necessarily the most shocking thing I've ever read in terms of plot, but then it is a romance. So I mean, overall, we're not really reading this for the plot, are we? Even though, you know, I am reading this for the plot, because the romance is just fine. So when I was thinking about DNFing this yesterday, my kind of indecision was because I do really like Anna Huang's writing. Is my voice is echoing off the radiator. That's really weird. But writing styles that I actually enjoy within romance are difficult to find. So I feel like within Anna Huang's books, we will find that I do prefer some more than others. So I didn't want to DNF this book and close the door on Anna Huang forever. And I am actually really glad that I pushed past that point where I was thinking about DNFing, because through the, like I said, the third quarter, I've actually like breezed through it and I'm having a really good time despite the romantic relationship not being my favorite thing. So I have audiobook to listen to. I have the final Wheel of Time live show tomorrow night, which is one of the reasons why I'm cleaning today. Because I have like 2 hours and 20 minutes of the audiobook of that to listen to. So I was like, might as well do something productive while I have to do that. And then I do anticipate finishing off the last quarter of this book tonight. I have no plans at all for the day, really, aside from just like getting some bits done. So that shouldn't be an issue. And I should be coming back to you a little bit later on today with my final verdict on this one. I finished Twisted Love by Anna Huang, and it is very much a 3-star read for me because of all of the reasons that I've already said. Really, I have no need to rehash them. The ending wasn't as good as like the, I want to say like the 50 to 85% mark I really enjoyed of this book. The end was okay. I will say though, with contemporary romances, the end of a contemporary romance, I generally like past the third act breakup, like when they start to reconcile, like you just know how it's gonna go. And then the epilogues generally are usually like pointless because it's just either launching the next book in the series, which is what this one did. It gave us an insight into where Bridget was going next, who is our main character Ava's, or one of her best friends, who is also a princess. And I think that her romance is going to be a bodyguard romance. I did check the synopsis for it yesterday when I was trying to decide whether I was going to DNF this book or not. So it was just like, oh, look at us, we're living happily ever after, and the next book's going to be about Bridget. And they're all the same. I know some people skip epilogues, which makes perfect sense to me. I just can't do it. I just can't do it. I really wish I could because they're pointless and I didn't enjoy it. But sadly, I cannot. So the reason why I gave this 3 stars is because I really like the writing. I really like some elements of the plot, but this relationship in particular did not do it for me. I didn't care for the love interest. I don't really think that they had any chemistry, but I did like, once we moved into that like third quarter of the book, the angst and the drama that was provided by the fact that these two were into each other. And so what we're gonna do with this book in terms of shelving or scrapping it, I'm gonna be scrapping Twisted Love, but I did not dislike this book. So I'm taking that to mean that I do not have to unhaul King of Wrath, because the reason why I'm going to be scrapping Twisted Love is that all of the books are on Kindle Unlimited. I would not buy the next books anyway, but I do have an interest in reading them. I think that they would be very quick casual reads to me, as this one has been. The issue that I do have, and I will admit to it, is that I say this about a bunch of romances and then I never continue, because I'm always starting like a new series by a new author instead of progressing through these quick easy reads in series that I've already started. And I know that I do it. Another thing that I do is, if I don't physically own a book, if I have an ebook copy of it or it's on KU, I forget that it exists and I never prioritize it. So will I continue on with this series? Only time will tell. But the reason why, because part of me would be happy to also unhaul this, because these are also, I checked, all of these ones are also available on Kindle Unlimited. So it's not like I can never read them in the future, but my attachment to this book is because it's a souvenir book from a trip that I took, and it is the one that I got personalized by Anna Huang. So I want to keep hold of it for that reason. If I read the rest of the Twisted Love series and it turns out I'm not already read this one and I'm just still ambivalent about it, I will unhaul this one as well. But for now, we're going to be putting this one back. I'm going to be scrapping this one, and I'm only hurting myself really, because instead of this counting 2 books towards the 10, it now only counts for 1. So this idea that I had to kind of speed up the process of getting through 10 books for this episode isn't really working out for me, is it? So what I need to do now, because I'm unhauling this, there's a gap on the shelves upstairs and I do need to fill that with something from the stacks, but it is kind of late. It's like 11 p.m. I think. I've been watching Vanderpump Rules on the couch, and what I really want to do is pick the next book that I'm going to be reading, so I know what I'm going into tomorrow morning. So I think what I'm going to do is we're going to skip the shelving for now. I'm going to pick our next author, decide what I'm going to read, and I'll check back in with you guys at some point tomorrow daytime for us to do the shelving portion of this video. Don't worry, I'm not doing you out of that. Like, it is coming. Jar is really hard to get into because my whole hand doesn't fit, so when I'm in there I'm kind of just scrabbling around. Okay, this one. Why does this challenge keep backfiring on me, man? Like, what have I done to deserve this? So Mary E. Pearson is an author. She's kind of a middle author when it comes to the authors that I own on purpose and the ones that I own accidentally. I own the entire box set of the Kiss of Deception series, and I own a book that came in a recent fairy loot, which I think is called The Courting of Bristol Keats. I know what I'm reading for this because this is already on my TBR for this month because it was my Patreon pick for June. And it's funny because I joked in the TBR, I was like, there's a 20 to 25% chance that I'm going to read this for Shelve It or Scrap It. And here we are now. The reason why I'm upset that it's come up, because it's actually good, because I'm multitasking. I'm reading a book that was actually on my TBR. It is the most timely I've been in reading a Patreon pick in like the last 6 or 7 months. But the reason why I'm not happy about this is because I don't think this is going to be an author that I don't like. This is a series that was very hyped on BookTube back in the day. Like when I started, people were reading and loving the series, but at the time it wasn't available in like UK, like it wasn't published in the UK. It has been now, but these are the UK paperbacks that I got as a box set after they'd all been published, so that they were all like matching covers and stuff. But at the time that I started BookTube, they kind of weren't accessible to me because they were a little bit expensive based on my budget and how accessible they were however many years ago, like 8 years ago, I think. So I kind of had this series on a pedestal, and it's like one of those series, you know, that you're waiting for the perfect time to read. But Natty has decided, and this stupid jar has decided, that right now is that time. So this one is the first book in a young adult romance trilogy about a princess who is getting married and she runs away from her wedding. There are 2 people hunting her down. One is the prince that she was supposed to marry, and one was an assassin. I think we get all of their perspectives in this book, but you don't know which one is which between the prince and the assassin, and neither does our main character. So I am expecting to love this because of the kind of the time that it was published was when the real good fantasy romance and romantasy was coming out. And I do feel like this is one of those classic young adult series that has hopefully stood the test of time and is still worth the read like 11 years after publication. Yeah, this was published in 2014. So my other option for this author would have been The Courting of Bristol Keats. However, as this one is already on my TBR and it is the one that I wanted to read, I am going to be going with The Kiss of Deception, because there is no way, if I hate The Courting of Bristol Keats, the way that I feel about this series, there is no way that I would be unhauling this box set without giving it a try. Unfortunately, I do think I'm going to really enjoy it, which means it's another fail in terms of what we're trying to do here. This is karma, because last time for episode 15, I scrapped absolutely everything and I was like, my soul needs a shelve. I can't win. I am winning, but I'm also not, you know? Let's see what we have that can replace Twisted Love upstairs. Ooh, we have Emily Henry down here. I really want this to be in the stacks though, because I do want to read it like sometime relatively soon. That's the reason why it's down here. We also have an Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. That would be a good one because it's similar in alphabet, but I do unfortunately think Book Lovers is going to be the best pick. So this one does fit in the gap that Twisted Love came out of. However, I do want to do a little bit of a rearrange here because we know these shelves are not actually in alphabetical order. They're in kind of like a rough approximation because the shape of like the cubbies and trying to keep all the authors together, I've had to mix them up a little bit. But what I essentially want to do is Hazelwood should be before Hoover, and they can actually, I'm pretty sure, move around within these 3. So I'm going to take Colleen Hoover out and move one of my Ali Hazelwood things over. I also kind of want this out because I want to put my Mandarin edition of The Love Hypothesis with the regular edition, which fits perfectly actually. And then I can keep my paperbacks of these 2 together and pop those guys in there. And then Henry should actually come before Hoover, so we'll put that there. Put Colleen Hoover back in. I wonder if actually, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Why is this here? Does that fit in there? Nope. These are like not even in alphabetical order in their cubbies at this point, which is disappointing. You know what? I've actually just found something I want to unhaul. Henry, what's this? Huang. Does this one fit here now still? Only just. It's a tight fit, but like it just about works. Actually though, I did just say I wanted to unhaul something. Lotus by Jennifer Hartman. This was a gift from Vish. It is like a serial killer romance, but like the romance isn't with the serial killer. One of the main characters was kidnapped. I don't know whether it is a serial killer now actually, but it is about a character who was kidnapped, and it's like a best friends relationship, but one of them was kidnapped, so they haven't seen each other in years, and then the guy that was kidnapped returns and they kind of like rekindle their relationship. I really enjoyed this. I did give it 3 stars though, because with the subject matter, it didn't kind of go in the direction that I expected it to, and I feel like I would have enjoyed it a little bit more if it had have gone that way. So I gave this one 3 stars, and I just don't feel like I need to keep it. So now we have another gap. So I'm gonna have to go grab something else. So I grabbed Icebreaker, and I also grabbed Faye by Cassandra Faye. One of these will go in, but it actually looks like, well, actually either of them could go. That one is a little bit thick for the gap though. So Icebreaker it is, and this one will be returning to the stacks. But I am here to give you guys an update on The Kiss of Deception, because I'm 150 pages into it now, and I'm having a really good time. Now that I've finished the Wheel of Time series, I have been switching between the physical and the audio of this so that I can get a little bit more read, like while I'm walking Brie and stuff, instead of starting a new audiobook that's not associated with Shelve It or Scrap It. And the audiobook is decent. It's not the best audiobook I've ever listened to, but it definitely does the job. And I am really, really enjoying this one. I also love this copy. I love a floppy US paperback, and this is like a quality one. The plot of this one is pretty much exactly as I laid out, although it is in execution a little bit different than I expected it to be. We are following a princess called Leah, and I will say my one kind of criticism of this book is that I feel like the world building could be explained just a little bit better, because I feel like a lot of the like names of places and the religion in this world and the way the magic potentially works, because there is magic in here, which actually is not what I expected, because that's not the kind of fantasy that I thought that this was, is kind of just like dropped in there and not really explained. You're supposed to gain an understanding of it, I guess, through context clues, which we are kind of building up to, but it's making me pause every time it's mentioned to kind of try and puzzle out like what the magic is, what it means to be a first daughter in this world, which our main character supposedly is. But with the first daughter title, there should be a power that she does not have for some reason. So essentially, she is being married off to this king, or the prince, I guess, of a different kingdom. She has not met this prince. She just knows that the king is old and crusty, and so she expects his son to be at least moderately old and crusty. Like, at least she's 17, so she's expecting this guy to be like at least 30, and this is not a future she wants for herself. She hasn't even had the chance to meet this guy, so she, along with her maid, flees the kingdom and goes to try and find a life for herself elsewhere. So they end up going to this place where the maid grew up, where she is going to be waiting for her sweetheart to join her, and the main character is kind of going with her to start this life for herself. Now, there are 2 people who follow her. One is an assassin, because the reason why this marriage has been arranged is because there is potential war brewing between these 2 realms that are to be joined by marriage and a third realm. So the ones that are going to be joined by marriage have decided that it's beneficial, even though they don't really get on, it's more beneficial for them to band together against this third force. So the assassin, as far as I can tell, is coming from this third party kingdom to kill the princess, and then the prince, who is the guy that she was supposed to marry, is also coming to look for her. Our main character ends up in this place where her maid Pauline is from, and she ends up working in a tavern where she's actually having a grand old time making an honest living for herself, and the prince and the assassin actually do catch up to her quite quickly. The chapters from the 2 male perspectives are titled The Prince and the Assassin. However, our main character obviously doesn't know that they're a prince and an assassin. She just knows them by the names that they have given her, which is Caden and Rafe. At least I'm assuming that they are the prince and the assassin figure. And so we know that one is a prince and one is an assassin, but we don't know which one of these 2 men is which. And I feel like Mary E. Pearson is really trying to trick me here, because like one has scarred hands and one has smooth hands. So I'm like, okay, the one with scarred hands is the assassin, right? What if he's not? What if he's not? How will I know? I feel like she's doing a bait and switch on me. You do have the element of mystery, because from Leah's perspective, you don't know which one is which. And obviously she is going to have a great old shock when she discovers that these 2 guys are the prince and the assassin who have come to kill her and or take her back home or whatever it is. And also the fact that this prince is young and handsome, and she thought that he was going to be old and crusty. So I am having a really good time. I like the writing style. I was a little bit worried in the first chapter because it does have that overly descriptive writing style, or it did have, that annoys me a little bit, where I just feel like every other word is an adjective or an adverb and it's a little bit too much. But that has settled down since then, and I am fully immersed in the story. I think switching to the audiobook at around the 40 to 50 page mark did really help in that regard, because I feel like I got a good idea of the flow of the book from the audiobook, and that has helped me when transitioning backwards and forwards between the physical text and the audio to keep that flow when I'm eyeball reading this. So yeah, so far so good. This is going exactly as predicted. I'm having a really good time with it. I do not anticipate this being a scrap. I'm not getting a 5-star feeling from it, but it's definitely pretty solid at this point.
Can we take a second to talk about this girl, this princess, who is running away from her home? She lives here. Okay, and she's fleeing. She doesn't want anyone to find her. She wants to live her life in peace. So she flees really fast, really far to here. This is how big the world map is. And she goes to here. And she's shocked that people know who she is and keep turning up and finding her and trying to kill her, when she literally just went from here to here. Here to here. That is all. Please ignore Brie. She's under the false assumption that I have some sort of food to give her, and I really truly do not. But I am 363 pages into The Kiss of Deception right now. I plan on finishing this today. I've only got like 120-ish pages left, I think, which I'm going to be playing Lorcana with Curtis tonight, but I think I can still manage it. It's actually a pretty quick read once you settle into it and kind of find the tone of the book. My one kind of criticism of it at the minute is that I wish the world building had been done differently, as I talked about pretty much in the last clip. I just feel like the way that Mary A. Pearson has chosen to unfold the world is not my personal preference. The reason why we don't know much about the religion, the world, and the magic, I'm finding out at this point in the book, is quite intentional, because we are going to discover that things are not as the main character originally thought. I personally would have liked to have had a base understanding of what the main character thought before we got into unraveling like the actual potential truth of the situation. And it does explain a little bit right at the beginning of the book. Me personally, when I go into a fantasy book, I often don't remember the first 50 pages of it where we're learning about the world or where the character is exploring the world, like the actual key actions of the character in the first 50 pages of the book. I often don't retain very well because I don't have the context provided by an understanding of the world and the magic. And I feel like we got a very brief description of the magical elements in here, which I feel tie very deeply to the religion of the world at the very, very beginning of the book. And we haven't really revisited it since. It has been referenced, but aside from the main character mentioning how she doesn't have magic, she doesn't have this gift of the first daughter multiple times throughout the book, it hasn't really expanded upon what was originally laid out. And I feel like that is why I don't have as much of a grounding in this world as I would like to. So now we're at the point where things are potentially going to be changing, or she's going to be learning a little bit more, but I don't feel like I have a great understanding of what the world is like in the place where she's from at the origin point of this novel. The romance is fine. I'm not ride or die for it or anything, but it's entertaining. I do love a love triangle, like a classic young adult love triangle really takes me back, and this definitely provides that. I'm at a point now where I know who the assassin and the prince are as well, so that's not a mystery that lasts the entire series. It is something that you kind of discover as the plot is developing, which makes sense because you can't have that, I feel, as a lead point if we're gonna have these guys as like main characters throughout the series in any capacity. And the plot is changing direction, so I think so far this book has had the structure that I really enjoy in fantasy stories, where we take the first book to really explore the characters and get to know them, and then towards the end of the book we actually discover a little bit more about what the plot of the series actually is. I'm kind of understanding why this series is called the Remnant Chronicles as well. The Remnant is something that is tied to this magical element that I don't really understand at this point. So I feel like going into the rest of the series, as we're now discovering some things about the magic, it's going to become more about whatever these remnants are. There are also like little sections throughout the book, tends to be in between the chapters, which are little snippets from some sort of lore. And once again, I like this one. It says that this is from a Morrigan book of holy text, which Morrigan, I'm pretty sure, is like the country that our main character is from. And like I said, the magic and the lore is tying into the religion, so I think that that is the relevance there. And I feel like it's one of those where they don't really add anything to the story for me at this point, but as I learn more about the world and what's actually going on and separate the propaganda from the truth of the magic and the world, those things are also going to become clear to me. So yeah, I have enjoyed this one kind of as I expected up to this point, and I don't see it massively disappointing me in the last 100 pages. Hello, welcome to my interrogation chamber. I just realized you can see this is what we call the council over here, because guys, what do you do with your plushies? Like, how do you display them? This is not even all of mine. This is like my favorite childhood one and a few of the newer ones that I've got, but I have a bunch of my older ones upstairs in a bag because I just don't know what to do with them. So this is what we call the council, and they sit and watch and judge me while I sleep. But it is later than I anticipated, but I have just finished my book, which is of course The Kiss of Deception, book 3, I think, for this video, which is not progressing as quickly as I would have liked, and definitely not progressing any faster with finishing The Kiss of Deception in terms of what we're trying to achieve here through Shelve It or Scrap It, because I did enjoy this one as anticipated. I don't feel like I was as deeply invested in it as I anticipated being. I do feel like that is because of the issues that I had with the world building and not feeling as immersed in this one as I would have liked to, but I really enjoyed the characters. Like I said, I'm not really ride or die for the romances. I do think it creates an interesting dynamic, and also given the time that this was written, it is exactly what I anticipated it being in terms of this little love triangle that we have going on, so I can't really fault it there. I do think that our main character went through a great deal of character growth throughout this. She went from being somebody who is quite naive, definitely quite selfish, in that she runs away from this wedding based purely on her own wants and doesn't really think about how it will affect her kingdom, because she's marrying this prince specifically for a purpose. And you gotta admire the courage that it takes to do that, but it also kind of snowballs into this series of events, which, to be fair, if she had have got married, there's no guarantee that this problem would have gone away, but there was at least a chance that it wouldn't have escalated to the point that it escalates to in this book. I was definitely right about the plot getting more complex, more involved the further we went into this. I've left this book still without a great understanding of the magic, but like I said, I do feel like the magic, the origin of the magic and the beliefs about the magic and how it ties to religion is going to play a key part of this plot and this world. And so I feel like it's something we're really just going to learn about more as the story progresses throughout the series. But I'm definitely happy with how the plot progressed in terms of the politics of the world and where I feel like it's going into the second book. The tension was a little bit higher throughout the end of this. There was kind of something that happened, which is a big event in the main character's life that I feel like it was unexpected, and then it also like happened over quite a short space of time and we moved on from it quite quickly, which does make sense within the context of the world, but just with it being such a momentous event in the character's life, I expected it to be given a little bit more attention than it did. But I'm also really happy with where this left off and where it sets up for the sequel. Content warnings in here for death of just one animal. I think it is like I talk about when I talk about fantasy books within the context of a fantasy world, the kind of things like horses falling in battle, hunting for food, that kind of cruelty or death, I guess, would be the accurate term. And also threats of sexual assault, as well as just like, you know, your general injury, fighting, torture kind of stuff that goes hand in hand with fantasy books. But in terms of my rating, I would say that this is like a very low 4, like a 3.5 to a 4. I would have just liked a little bit more of a level of investment, but I'm definitely keen to go into the sequel, especially where this left off, because I actually just think that this got better and better the more that it went on. I do think as well that this is a deceptively long book. I was listening to the audiobook, as I said, I dipped in and out of it. I read most of the end physically, but I remember like I was probably 250 almost pages in, and it was saying I was like 40% of the way through, and I was like, that can't be right. This is like a 400 page book, right? It's actually closer to 500 pages. It's 86, sorry. I can't read, which is funny because I just read this entire thing, but I feel like it looks like about a 350 to 400 page book. Still love this edition though. So I'm happy to let you guys know that this is going to be shelved. Now I did pull this out of my TBR cart to read it for this video because, as I mentioned, it is my Patreon pick for the month of June. It's Natty's pick, so I was going to be reading it soon anyway, but this does have a gap ready and waiting for it on the shelf. It came in a box set. I got a box set of the first 3 books, so it can just slot right into the box along with the others, and all of my Mary A. Pearson books are safe for now. I know that she has another series that I don't have, which is The Dance of Thieves, which I'm pretty sure is still set in this world, but I'm not sure about The Courting of Bristol Keats. I'm sure it's not like super relevant that you read anything in order anyway, but let me know whether it's set in the same world or anything, just so that I'm aware. That one is a shelve, which is great. I'm feeling really great about everything that I'm reading in this episode, but we need to make some progress, you know? So let us hope that the next book that we pull is not one that's going to stab me in the back. I feel like I've had nothing but the nicest kind of betrayal from this episode of Shelve It or Scrap It.
I do have one right in my fingertips, which is this one. And this one is V Castro. Okay, this one is a very interesting one, actually. I'm happy with this pick, I think. I don't know how it's gonna go though, so we'll see. So while I'm down here anyway, we will just slot this guy back in where it belongs. Feels fatter now that I've read it. And we will move up to the V Castro books. Now I'm going to be honest, if I do scrap one of these, it's actually not going to give me much space on my shelf. So the 2 books that I have from V Castro, I have Immortal Pleasures and I have The Haunting of Alejandra. And I did not bring my phone, which is really unhelpful. I will get my laptop. So the reason why I have 2 books by V Castro to start us off, I was staying with my friend Wynne in Edinburgh last September because I was going to RAR, which is a romance festival, and they received a box from the publisher which had a couple of proof copies in and also like a bunch of goodies, and then they received a duplicate box with the same books in, same goodies, so she sent these my way. They have very different vibes. I remember describing them when I was hauling them. This one looks like it's like a literary kind of book, and this one looks like it's like vampire erotica or something, and a lot of people did say that the vibes that they're giving is pretty accurate. They are both horror books, and this one is about a woman that's haunted by the Mexican folk demon La Llorona, and I thought it was about grief, but it says it's about motherhood, family legacy, and self-discovery. And this one, I don't know if it's erotic, but it is indeed about a vampire. So my gut is telling me that of the 2, I want to read The Haunting of Alejandra, but I know nothing about this author, so I am going to do a quick look at the average rating. This actually may not influence my decision because I don't love vampires. I've discussed it before, but essentially I am not over them from the first time that they were really, really hyped, which is what, like 2000 and, well, I mean, they've been hyped for a long time. Vampires have always been popular, but like the height of Twilight and everything that came off the back of that, and the big surge in like paranormal romance in the YA spaces, because when you have stuff like that, like it's happening right now with Romantasy, so many books get pushed out with the same tropes and the same themes that you don't just get the good ones like Twilight, in my opinion, when I was like 13, but you also get like a lot of random books that aren't very good but that people will buy because they fit this niche that's really popular right now. So I kind of burnt myself out on vampires then, and I haven't come back around yet to actually wanting to read any vampire stories. So neither of these books are especially highly rated. The Haunting of Alejandra has a 3.65 average rating, and Immortal Pleasures has a 2.93 average rating, which is really not great. So I am definitely going to be going with my gut with this one. I'm going to be trying The Haunting of Alejandra because if I don't enjoy this one, realistically, I'm not super enthused to pick up a vampire book by an author that I haven't enjoyed. So we'll see how this one goes. And I think because it's going to have a little bit of a literary skew, or at least that's the way it seems, I think I'm going to find it a little bit refreshing because it's a little bit of a change of pace from a lot of fantasy, which, as we all know, is what I most commonly read. I was sat here all night ready to film this update for you guys, and then Brie shoved herself in behind me and has pushed me forward. And now I feel like I can't get into an appropriate position, but I'm about halfway through this book now. I'm very close to the halfway point. I'm 126 pages in. I have mixed feelings about this one because I did actually almost DNF it in the first chapter because the focus of the book was off-putting to me. It makes sense within the context of the book, and the way that you feel reading this is definitely the author's intent, but I just generally was not having a good time. And it also has this kind of like slice of life element to it that was disinteresting me. But since I got past that first chapter, I've gotten into this a little bit more, but I do still have mixed feelings on it because our main perspective in this one, thank you Brie, is of course Alejandra, who is our main character that is being haunted, and she hates her life. Like, she hates the situation that she's ended up in. She hates her husband and she resents her children, and her perspective is exhausting to read from. It's kind of getting me down how depressy she is, especially throughout the beginning of this book. I mean, throughout the entire thing, but like the beginning is kind of brutal, being in her head and just how tired and done she is with her life. So content warnings in here for suicidal thoughts. Also throughout the book there is a lot of like violence. This focuses a lot on colonization, and also there are some sexual assault triggers, and there is some sexual assault content in here as well as a bunch of gore. And I think my main disconnect with this story is that, as it lays out in the back, it's about motherhood, family legacy, and self-discovery, but it is also about healing generational trauma. And we quite literally go through the generations of Alejandra's family in this book. So chapter 1 was from Alejandra's perspective. Chapter 2 was from a woman in Mexico in the 1500s. Then we flick back to Alejandra. Then we go to her mother. I'm about to start a new perspective in her family line at this point, and we're also delving into her relationships. So one chapter is about Alejandra specifically in relation to her husband, but it focuses so much on the motherhood element of it, and that is where it is losing me because I can't relate. And you don't have to relate to every book that you read. One of the beauties of reading is exploring different perspectives outside of your own, but a lot of the focus of this book, and especially on the demon that is haunting Alejandra, is on things like period blood and breast milk, and the demon like eats fetuses and placenta, and it's giving me the ick. And I mean, it is a horror. So it's supposed to give me the ick to some degree, but this is, because it's a literary horror, it is one where we have a physical manifestation of the horrific elements of this book, which is this demon, La Llorona. But then we also have the metaphor of La Llorona and what that represents. And the meaning of the book is actually the representation of La Llorona, not the physical manifestation. And I think because this ties so much to motherhood and kind of the complex emotions that you can face during motherhood, and it is quite stark and honest and raw. Like throughout the first chapter of this book, Alejandra is talking about how she very clearly resents her children. It does not diminish the love that she has for them. She does not want any harm to come to them, even though she wants harm to come to herself. But she is very aware that they are part of the thing that is trapping her in this life that she never wanted for herself, and that she has now found herself stagnating in. And I feel like it kind of deals with all, like, I can't relate, like I said, so I can't speak for anyone, but I feel like it encapsulates all of those complex emotions that you can feel regarding motherhood that you would never speak out loud, because you don't want your children to know that you resent them and that you would have a better life if they didn't exist, because you do still love them. But then this also delves back through Alejandra's family history and the constant theme of abandonment, and I don't want to say bad mothers, but unconventional motherhood throughout the generations of her family, and where this stems all the way back to the 1500s and colonization, and a bargain that one of the women in Alejandra's line made to get her out of a desperate situation. I think for me, when it comes to horror, I do not like horror steeped in metaphor. I'm super inexperienced with horror as well. Like I haven't read a ton. I maybe read maybe 2 horrors a year, if that. It is a genre that I enjoy, but it's not one that I've explored to its limitations. So in terms of what I know I enjoy in horror, I love a slasher. That is my favorite type of horror, where it's not actually all that scary. It's not even especially gory. It's more, I guess, like thriller in pace. So things that deal heavily with metaphor, like I read the Cassandra Core book. Is it the one about the eyes, right? It's like a novella. I didn't really like that. And actually this in theme is reminding me of a book that I read many, many years ago when I was pretty new to BookTube. So I was trying all of the stuff that I'd heard mentioned. And I think I found this in the library and I'd seen it mentioned on BookTube, so I picked it up. It's Her Body and Other Parties by Carmen Maria Machado. And the way that this is so focused on women reminds me so much of Her Body and Other Parties, which is a collection of short stories. Now, I actually rated that one 4 stars. I don't think I enjoyed it. So I think that was more of a case of like, I thought that it was better than I enjoyed it. Like it just was not for me. Collection of short stories straight off don't love. And the horror element in a lot of them was more to do with metaphor and what that means for the character and how the character's feeling, as opposed to anything physical and tangible. And I do like the physical and the tangible. When it comes to all elements of reading, I don't really like fantasy that centers around things like dream magic, where it bends the rules of reality. And I also don't really like fabulism or magical realism either, because it has that intangible, unexplained element to it a lot of the time. So the thing that's keeping me hooked in here is actually the different perspectives of the different family members throughout the generations and the different shifts in focus we're having. So I feel like right now, my overall thoughts are probably going to be along the lines of, this isn't really for me, but it is interesting enough to keep me hooked for the long haul. So I know that I literally just said to you 4 pages ago that I was interested enough in this book to see it through, but I have changed my mind. I started The New Perspective, which was Alejandra's grandmother, and I just could not read one more tale of shitty men that are even shittier husbands leading to women that are miserable and hate their children and their lives. I just cannot do it. So I'm going to be DNFing this one, which means that it is a scrap, not only for The Haunting of Alejandra, but also for Immortal Pleasures by V. Castro. Am I regretting my choice of reading The Haunting of Alejandra first? Maybe a little bit. Like, there is a chance that I would have enjoyed this a little bit more, but I do still stand by that if I didn't enjoy this one, then I don't really have any interest in picking up a book by the same author about vampires. So unfortunately, these two are a no from me, and they are going to be hitting the scrap pile, which means we finally get to the part of this video where this theme was supposed to make this episode a little bit easier, because this is book 4 for this episode, and this one is going to stand in for book 5, meaning that it's one less book that I have to read in total. So let us find a book to go in that gap. The problem is that the majority of the books in the stacks are hardbacks, and these are my paperback shelves, but we'll see what we've got. In terms of paperbacks that are not romance, I actually don't really have anything. Oh, I do, I think, actually. This one is the closest we're going to get alphabetically, which is Daughter of the Blood by Anne Bishop. So I need to remember that Iron Gold is missing from here. That is what Curtis is currently reading, so I need to leave a space. So if I could just see, I don't know if I'm going to be able to move The Magician's Apprentice. Just. Then we move H-I-J-K-L. So H-I-J-K, so that should go there. J-K-L, this one goes here. And because the book that I took off this shelf is so much thicker than what I replaced it with, I'm gonna put Olivia Blake on that one because that shelf's quite tight, and then I think I should still have enough space for Iron Gold there. But if not, I have room to kind of like move that up as well. And now it's time to see what book 6 is going to be for this video. Oh, oops, we'll go for this one. Ooh, Alison Saft. Okay, these ones are in the stacks to start off with. I need to find the one that I dropped. What was it? Kylie Lee Baker. Okay. Alison Saft is the one that we pulled. So the main problem here is that the Alison Saft books that I have are buried right at the bottom of the stack. So the easiest one to get to is here. Whoa. And I'm not even going to attempt to get the other one out that way because this stack will 100% fall on me. So my two Alison Saft books are very, very different. So much so that I didn't actually realize that I had two books by Alison Saft until I was going through the stacks for an episode of Shelve It or Scrap It. And by chance, I kind of realized because these are not the same. This one, I think is set in like a Bridgerton time period. I think it's a YA. This one, I think is Gothic, Sapphic romance. So they're from two different subscription boxes as well. This one is Illumicrate, and I think that this is YA. Yeah, this one is the YA Fairy Loot from January last year. In terms of personal preference between these two, because they are so different, I honestly don't know which one I would prefer. This one has kind of like, not quite spooky, but a dark Emily Wilde kind of vibe to it. Whereas this one is very much given like high society Bridgerton deal, neither of which is very appealing to me, if I'm being honest. Both of them have the opportunity for me to enjoy them, but both of them have elements that I have read in the past and have not enjoyed. So I'm actually going to let the average ratings do the heavy lifting on these. I also don't think that I've heard glowing reviews for either of them. They're both books that I haven't heard much about, if I'm being honest. I've only heard a few people mention them in passing. So, I think that this one might be the one that I've seen more about because the cover, the normal cover of it, looks a lot more familiar to me. This one has a 3.49 average rating though, so not amazing. A Dark and Droning Tide, 3.56. These are so very close, and I honestly do not have a preference between the two. So I think what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to throw these up on Patreon for a poll, because my next thing that I'm going to do now anyway is proof and schedule a video. The next time I'm going to be picking up a book, like if I manage to finish that before dinner, it's still like a good hour till I'm going to be picking something up, but otherwise it's going to be later this evening, so it gives time for people to vote. And maybe my patrons, who, to be fair, not all of my patrons have the same reading taste as me, but some of them do, so hopefully they will be able to help me to decide which one of these I should pick up. But I definitely feel like Alison Saft is a great author for the theme of this video, like how V Castro was, because if I don't enjoy one of these, I'm unlikely to be enthusiastic to pick up the other one, considering both of them have things that I don't typically reach for in them. I have returned. I've been really good as well, and I have not at all even peeked at what the verdict maybe for this poll. I have had some comments on the poll. None are really positive, if I'm being honest. And the one person who said that they enjoyed one of these books compared it to Holly Black, which is a big no from me. So let's see what my patrons have decided I'm reading. This screen is far too small for me to read that. Ooh, 54% went with A Dark and Droning Tide. This makes sense based on me and my patrons, I think, because I think if they're going with what they think I'm going to like, they are going to assume I'm going to like the gothic and moody book more than I am going to like the sweet girly book that's very pink. But saying that, I did realize after I spoke to you guys that this, I'm pretty sure, would fulfill one of my Art Fantasy bingo prompts, one of the more specific ones actually, which is a book that features somebody who like sews or makes fabric or deals with textiles in some sort of way. I can't remember the specifics of the plot in here, whether one of the characters is a seamstress or a dressmaker or something, but it does have a like needle on the front, and the top says Forbidden Desire woven through every stitch, so I feel like that would have counted. But it is not to be. It is going to be instead A Dark and Droning Tide, which is the one that one of my patrons compared to Holly Black, and somebody agreed and said not only Holly Black but The Book of Night, which is the book that even a lot of Holly Black fans don't even like, and I am not a Holly Black fan at all. This actually, I've read the first sentence and this seems like I'm going to intensely dislike it. So the first sentence of the synopsis says, Lorelei Caskell, a folklorist with a quick temper and an even quicker wit, is on an expedition with 6 eccentric nobles in search of a mythical spring of untold power. So this falls into the category of books that I don't love in terms of the story structure, where it's like a group of characters band together to achieve something. Along the way, they grow closer, obstacles are thrown in their path. It's about the journey, not the destination. That is what I'm getting from this anyway. Oh damn, somebody's been murdered, great. And it's a murder mystery. Murder mystery where the main character Lorelei's mentor is murdered and the suspects are the 5 remaining expedition mates. And then we bring the Emily Wilde into it because the only person Lorelei knows is innocent is her long-time academic rival, the insufferably gallant and maddeningly beautiful Sylvia von Wolf. If I enjoy this, it's going to be a miracle, but believe it or not, I'm going into it with an open mind because I didn't know half of the things I just said to you guys before, or I forgot until I read the synopsis. It's just, I don't think it's looking good for this one, but we'll see. So it's 10:30. I am on my way to bed, but I just made the impulsive decision to come in here and be brutal and let you guys know that I am going to be DNFing A Dark and Droning Tide. I read 3 chapters, and did I give it a fair chance? Not really, but sometimes, you know when you just don't want to read something? I didn't actually read 3 chapters. I got the book on Libby, because obviously I don't like to read my special editions when I can read an ebook copy for free. So I got the ebook on Libby and I read the first couple of chapters and I just was not retaining the world building at all. It felt like there was a lot of info dumping, a lot of telling and not showing. And I put it down like very close to the end of chapter 3 and I have no desire to return to it. I'm aware obviously that I didn't really give it a fair chance. So I was going to return to it in the morning while I have my coffee and get ready for the day. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to. I don't want to. I was thinking about it because I'm going to bed now. I was like, oh, maybe I'll like read a chapter and then read a bit in the morning. I don't want to. And we're just going to roll with it. I feel like I'm in one of those moods, you know, like sometimes I can be really brutal about DNFing books. And I'm not even in a bad mood because normally it is directly tied to how I'm feeling at the time. I've had an okay day today. It's not been a great day. It's not been a bad day though. It's just been a day. So yeah, I just... There were so many things in the synopsis that I didn't really care for. And the fact that the writing style, the info dumping, like I feel like it lacked atmosphere, also does actually seem to be set in a time period that I don't love, like the Regency era. It actually reminded me a lot of, what is that vampire book that I love the cover of, but I didn't like the book? Mistress of Lies. And also the Rinchapeco book that I DNF'd that is also about vampires. What is that book called? It's called Dagger Under Nightfall or something. I know it was a Goldsborough book and that's why I read it. And it was one that I was actually really excited for because I really like the Bone Witch. It is called Silver Under Nightfall. I didn't like that either. The time period and the kind of atmosphere that Alison Saft is going for in that book reminded me of both of those books, which I didn't like. So the vibes were just off. It's a harsh DNF, but it's fine. I just want to enjoy what I'm reading right now. Like sometimes if something's okay or passable or not too taxing to read, like I'll persevere with it because I don't mind reading it. But right now, like I actually want to enjoy what I'm reading, so I need at least like a good atmosphere or like a writing style that I can jive with, and that book was not providing that for me. So back to the drawing board. These were books, they're obviously both going to be scraps, which I'm sad that I didn't give this a go, but the Regency era, not really for me. So I feel like it's a case of like my life is not going to be ruined by unhauling this book, so I'm okay with it. I didn't anticipate it being a 5-star or anything. So these ones are books 6 and 7, which means that we're moving on to book 8. We've got 3 to go. I feel like I have swung quite dramatically from enjoying all of the books that I was reading and that being a problem to the problem now being that I can't, like I don't even enjoy a book enough to want to finish it. So hopefully our next one is going to balance it out a little bit. Maybe I'll finish it but I don't like it. That would be a nice middle ground. Or I'll like it but I don't feel like I need to keep it. So let's see who we have. Is that upside down? I actually can't read it. I'm trying really hard. Stephanie Garber. Oh, Stephanie. Okay. I actually have 3 books by this author. 2 of them are copies of the same book. So both of those are downstairs, I think. So let's get those ones first. So I actually think, I don't want to get all the cushions out. I actually think 1 copy is in the stacks, which it is. This is an ARC copy that I found in a charity shop, which I got because if I ended up really loving this series, then this is quite like a cool thing to have. I'm sure Caraval is like here somewhere. I always lose that one. Did I move it upstairs? Yes. This one is the original UK hardcover. So it has the hidden cover underneath. So that is how long I have had this book. It was published in, 2017. And then I also, of course, have the Fairy Loot edition of Once Upon a Broken Heart as well. So this is what we have on the line right now. This is something that Fairy Loot have just done the sale for the really nice Fairy Loot editions of the Caraval series. So if it turns out that I love this book and I've missed out on those, I'm going to be so upset. Are they still available? I really don't think that they are. Yeah, I can't see them at the top of the trove, so I really just don't think that they're available, which makes sense because they were stunning, so I'm really not surprised that they sold out. Problem that I'm going to have with this, okay, is that I know that Once Upon a Broken Heart, first book in a trilogy, Caraval, first book in a trilogy. I also know that these are set in the same world, and the problem with that is that I actually think I'm going to enjoy Once Upon a Broken Heart more than I enjoy Caraval, based on just the various things I've heard people say about these two things over the years. However, even though I am pretty sure that you can read this without reading Caraval, I am who I am, so I'm going to be going for it in order. And the thing that concerns me about Caraval is that I believe that the author writes with synesthesia, so she'll like describe smells as colours, like I could smell red, pairing the senses with things that don't match them. And Caraval is one that I want to enjoy because it's super popular, but it's one that I have thought for a long time that I really don't know if I am going to enjoy it. I mean, I very much still could. I know that this is about sisters, and I know it is about a carnival that is like this exclusive event. Okay, so it's about two sisters. Caraval comes to town. It is a like carnival or a circus where the audience participates in the show. Obviously has something to do with magic. Caraval rolls around, the two sisters receive their invitations, and one of them is kidnapped and the other one is trying to get her back. Something else that has kind of made me postpone Caraval for a long time is that I didn't love The Night Circus. Not saying that they're the same book at all, but just circus books have scared me a little bit since then, because I wanted to love The Night Circus as well and I really didn't. So, this could maybe count for the epistolary prompt for, I really think it could actually. Does it have anything else, or is it just at the beginning? No, there's some other little bits of like letters and stuff in here as well. So yeah, this could count for the epistolary prompt for our fantasy bingo, which is cool. And also, if nothing else, I will be getting this off my TBR finally. It has been a long time coming. I finished the last candle that I was burning yesterday, so I wanted to get a new one out, and this is excellent timing actually, because I don't really care too much about burning a specific candle while I'm reading, like to match the book. However, when I do have candles that match the books, it seems a shame not to save them for the time that I'm reading the actual book. So this one has been next up on my to burn list for ages, and I keep pushing it back because I'm like, okay, but I do have Caraval, I do have Once Upon a Broken Heart, so I should probably save it to burn then. So today I am going to be burning Jacks of the Hollow from Luna Bookish Flames Candles. I am a rep for this company as well, so I do have a discount code that permanently lives in my description box, but this one is lavender, vanilla, coconut and musk. And don't worry, because I do have another Once Upon a Broken Heart candle, which is like a ship candle for the couple of the series that I can burn if/when I start that series as well. I also realized last night that as Caraval is counting for book 8 in this video, if I were to dislike it, if I were to DNF it, if I did not want to keep this book on my shelves, then this would be the last book for the video, because the Arc and Once Upon a Broken Heart would count for books 9 and 10. That being said, I've just picked up the physical book. What did I do? I've been listening to the audiobook this morning while I was walking Brie and having breakfast, and I have read 56 pages of it. And I'm really enjoying it so far. It is time for an update because I've read quite a chunk of Caraval now. I'm 154 pages into it out of just over 400. It might actually, because they're the acknowledgements, it might actually be exactly 400 pages. I think it's 402, but I'm kind of enjoying it. Like, I definitely think it's easy to read. I am enjoying reading it, and the writing style is not as distracting as I thought I would be with what I'd heard people say about it over the years, with the use of colour described pretty much attached to everything. Like, the most recent thing that I think I've read is that Scarlett mentioned somebody had like a periwinkle tinge of confusion or something like that. But it's not as distracting as I anticipated it being, and it's actually not incredibly noticeable, even though I'm going into it kind of knowing that that is what the writing style is. Something that I am missing from here, I feel, is atmosphere. Like, it definitely has the whimsy of a carnival or circus book, but I feel like it's not as atmospheric, and it is descriptive, but it's not transportative to me. Like, I'm not really sinking into this. I'm actually losing the thread more than I'm like losing myself in the book, which is sad because that's kind of what I wanted from a circus vibe. I am kind of enjoying the story though, and the plot as well as the characters, although I will say it's a surface level enjoyment of the characters. I'm not like super invested in any of them, but I'm definitely having like a decent time with it. So in this one, we are following Scarlett and Tella, who are sisters, and they have a terrible relationship with their father. He's abusive, and Scarlett is set to go and marry this duke that she's never met. So a few weeks before this is due to happen, she sees her sister making out with a sailor in the basement, I think, of their house, and her father catches them all down there, and one of them gets punished for it because it's quite obvious this sailor is down there dallying with this man's daughters. And so the main character Scarlett has been writing letters to Legend, who is the person who runs Caraval, for many, many years, and finally she has got a reply back. She's been asking Legend to bring Caraval to the island where she's from, and Legend replies eventually and says that Caraval is not currently traveling, but he has extended like a personal invitation to her to come to where Caraval is. So this sailor, in exchange for the third invitation that Scarlett has received, agrees to take them to Legend's private isle, where Scarlett gets swept up in the game of Caraval. So upon her arrival, her sister is kidnapped. It is a little bit more sinister in description. Like, the kidnapping seemed a lot more sinister in the synopsis than it actually is, although I do feel like there is a sinister edge to Caraval that we are going to explore, and then maybe this turns out to be a little bit more threatening. Her sister is taken as part of this game, and Scarlett is chasing her sister, who has been swept up in Caraval as part of the Caraval game that she's participating in, which is essentially like a scavenger hunt. They are given a series of clues, and the ultimate purpose of this year's game is to find Scarlett's sister. So Scarlett is not the only one looking for her. A bunch of other people are as well, and Scarlett has been saddled with this sailor, Julian, who was previously attached to her sister, and they only like used essentially to help get to this island. He now becomes her partner throughout the game of Caraval. So the plot, the scavenger hunt format, the way that we're exploring Caraval through the structure of these clues. So the first one will pertain to a certain area or a challenge, and then the second clue will take them to a new location where we discover even more of the whimsical nature of Caraval. Whimsical magic is not my favorite. We've already discussed that in this video. So there's things in here that do not seem to have any rules or kind of make any sense or don't happen for any rhyme or reason. One of the first instances of magic that we encounter in here is that they are escaping from the cold. Julian and Scarlett are escaping from the cold, and Legend has left them some clothing which looks very plain, but when they put it on, it changes into like this beautiful, elegant attire that morphs given the situation. So when it's bedtime, it just kind of shifts into a nightgown, and then in the morning it turns into an outfit fit for the day again. So in terms of the magic, I think that is potentially where it's losing me within the atmosphere, because it's not easy for me to follow when it's whimsical and things happen just because. So that could be maybe the slight disconnect between me and the book, but I'm still very much enjoying it. And considering the plot is the thing that I'm enjoying the most at the minute, I'm very excited to see how that continues to develop throughout this book. So I do feel like we are going to have quite a few plot twists in store in this one. So I appreciate that this is a little bit of an odd angle. It's not one that you normally see in my videos or my vlogs, but I'm working on a DIY project that was a little bit impulsive, and so this room is completely in shambles, and I'm also making a separate video on that project, so I don't want to reveal too much because it's going to be a couple of weeks, I think, before you do see that video. I do also appreciate that I'm once again wearing this shirt. You're gonna have to trust me, it has been a couple of days. This one is a very casual t-shirt for me as well, because I have two of them, but this one has a big bleach stain on the back, and once again, I'm going to be dedicating myself to that DIY project today, so I've put something on that I don't care too much about. Just so happens that it's also a really comfortable casual shirt, so I have been wearing it a lot in general in this vlog. For the last couple of days, I've been working on that project, so I haven't been reading as much. So it's taken me a little bit of time to get through the middle section of Caraval, but I'm 288 pages into it now, so I have just over 100 pages left. I am going to be working some more on this project today, but I do still aim to finish this one because I think a lot of the work that we're going to be doing is not actually going to take us too much of today to do. Like, I should have the evening free, or at least somewhat free, to get some reading in. But at this point in the book, I'm still very much torn. There is still a lot that I'm enjoying about this, but it's definitely not a new favorite. And I think in terms of books that I've read in the past, and I read this book years ago, I read this book when it was a new release, so I couldn't even tell you the specifics of the plot right now, but something about this book feels like Heartless by Marissa Meyer, and I don't even know why that book came to mind because it truly has been such a long time since I read it. Just something about reading this is very reminiscent of Heartless to me. Now, if any of you guys have read it more recently or if you're more familiar with it, maybe you could tell me why. I'm not sure whether it is the whimsical nature of the world, because I feel like Heartless is a Alice in Wonderland retelling, I'm pretty sure. It's not my favorite of Marissa Meyer's books. I read it because I love the Lunar Chronicles, and it definitely does not stand up to the Lunar Chronicles. It's not as good at all. I think I gave it a 3 or a 4 star, but I did enjoy it because I really liked Marissa Meyer's writing. But in some regards, Stephanie Garber reminds me a little bit of Marissa Meyer within the writing style, because it's not an overly complicated one. Like, it definitely does the job. It's definitely not a slow-paced book at all, but it's not so fast that I'm kind of losing the thread. It's a faster paced story than I typically read and typically love, but it's not too fast-paced that I'm struggling to follow it, which also reminds me a lot of Marissa Meyer. So I feel like maybe the pacing and their tones are very similar, and then I think it's maybe the whimsical nature of the world in here and Caraval that is reminding me of the whimsical nature of Heartless, because it is obviously an Alice in Wonderland retelling, so it's set in Wonderland, which has a lot of whimsy. So I still think it's the plot that's carrying me through this. I like the characters. I don't love them. They're fine. They are doing the job. They're not going to be my new favorites or anything, but I feel like they're a good fit for the story. The world building, it could have a little bit more atmosphere. I'm not as sold on the atmosphere as I kind of feel like I expected to be in a book about a circus, and the world building is slightly too whimsical for my taste, but I'm definitely having a good time reading it. I am struggling to stay absorbed at points. I am quite distracted right now because my mind is just thinking about this project I'm real eager to finish. Kind of can find myself falling in and out of it, but generally when I'm in it, I'm really enjoying it. Right now, I would not be mad about reading more books in this series. I think it has provided a enjoyable reading experience, and I feel like that is what is going to tip the scales for me, because at this point, I don't feel like it feels any different to a bunch of 3-star books that I've read. But when I'm reading a lot of 3-star books, I'm like, when is this going to be over? I've enjoyed it enough, but not enough to want to stay in this world. With this one, it is not taxing to read. When I'm reading it, I'm enjoying it, and I'm not reading it wishing it was over. So I feel like that's definitely a good sign. I feel like I'm in some sort of weird limbo right now where I'm like half in shadow and half in light because the sun is setting right there. But I have just finished Caraval by Stephanie Garber, and I think overall I did really enjoy this one. There are things that I definitely didn't love about it. I thought that the villains in here were a little caricaturish and gimmicky, and I felt like when we were getting the plot reveals because of that, it also felt kind of caricaturish and gimmicky towards the end. We had what I feel were a lot of conveniences in here. I would have liked things to be a little bit more difficult for the main character and a little bit more complex, especially in terms of the clues that she has to follow to participate in the game of Caraval. And when it all came down to it and kind of what was really going on and the reasons behind a lot of things, I guess I kind of was confused what logic drew us to where we were. But I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the world. The characters, like I said, were fine. I wasn't overly attached, but I didn't dislike them. The main character I did not dislike. So yeah, overall, like, I had a really good experience with this one. In terms of rating, very similarly to The Kiss of Deception, I've given it like a 3.5. It is very much, I feel, solidly a 3.5, and I never ever need to use a half-star rating aside from a 3.5, because the difference between a 3 and a 3.5 to me, like, a 3.5 is not quite a 4, but I very much, like, my overall thoughts are positive, where a 3 is like there are equally as many things I disliked about this as things that I enjoyed. Whereas with Caraval and The Kiss of Deception, that is definitely not the case. Like, my overall feelings on them are positive. I honestly could go either way with this. Something that kind of, I was approaching the end of this book with a sense of foreboding, because I was like, oh, I'm sure that people have said a certain thing about the sequel to this book. And I'm like, no, surely I'm remembering wrong. Surely that is not true. And no, it is true. The sequel follows Tella, who is Scarlet's sister. And Tella in this book, I did not like her. And there's like a duality to Tella, because the things that she does come from a good place, seemingly, but her actions and the way that she executes her good intentions are terrible. Like, she comes off as like a spoiled, selfish little brat, and maybe she is. I don't know her that well. I have a negative opinion on her overall, but then it all turns out like, oh, I did it for you, I did it because of this, and it's like, okay, but I never really asked you to do this for me, and you've made me feel like shit. Up until this point, I found out that it was for me. The thought of the second book following Tella is not exactly a promising one. I do feel like this is something that I have heard other people say, so I know that I'm not really alone in that. But I also do feel like if Stephanie Garber has chosen to make Tella the main character of book 2, then she should have a story that is worth telling. And it does seem like the second book is kind of going to be not a repeat of the first book, but it's once again we're going to be exploring the world of Caraval. I could shelve or I could scrap this, honestly. I'm leaning towards a shelve, because this is also Stephanie Garber's debut. I feel like she has a lot of potential to grow. I have heard, like I said, that Once Upon a Broken Heart is better than Caraval, or a lot of people enjoy it more. I did have a quick look at the Goodreads ratings as well, because I know what Once Upon a Broken Heart follows and how that is tied to the Caraval world. Because like I said, I'm pretty sure you can read it without Caraval. I personally just like to read things in order when possible. I looked at the Goodreads ratings when I was looking at the synopsis for book 2, which book 2 is legendary. And the ratings are very similar. This is like a 3.96, and I think Once Upon a Broken Heart is like 4.06. So I feel like in terms of quality, they're like pretty consistent. And I did enjoy my time reading this. There were things that I didn't love. I could have been more absorbed, but while I was reading it, I was having a good time. And honestly, that is good enough for me. There are books and series that I've read where I can't say that about them. So I am going to shelve this one, and which means that I'm going to be keeping Once Upon a Broken Heart. But, and I should have prepared and actually got the books. I popped this in the space where the hardcover finished copy of Caraval goes, just while I was reading the book. I'm actually going to be scrapping this one because I don't feel the need to keep it. I didn't love Caraval, and so I don't need this as like a trophy on my shelves. I'm happy to let go of this now, but I am going to be keeping Caraval and also Once Upon a Broken Heart. Honestly, I just shelved that, but now I'm going to need it as a reference, because in terms of this video, that does mean that Caraval by Stephanie Garber is book 8. And then based on the logic we've been following, which I know this is the most chaotic episode I have ever done of this, as regarding the rules. Like, normally the rules are a lot more clear than this, and I don't just do what I feel like in the moment. But following kind of the precedent that we've already set in this video, that would make the ARC copy of Caraval book 9, which means that we have one more book that I need to read for this video. So I guess whatever happens, we are going to be ending the episode after this next book, which is good actually, because I'd quite like to post this video sometime soon. The only exception, I guess, would be if I read a book from the stacks and I have to find a place on my shelf, and then we're gonna have to carry on. But let's see what book 10 is gonna be. You know what, there is actually next to me, there are 3 authors that are in this jar. So like 6 books by 3 different authors. So if one of those will come out, that would be great, because my library is, half of it's inaccessible right now. I can't even get to the stacks. Okay, so our next author I win. Okay, Chloe Gong is like right here. So these are the authors I was talking about. We have Kylie Lee Baker, Chloe Gong, and also Alex E. Harrow. I've not read anything by any of these authors. Down here, actually, we also had Joan He. So there was quite a lot eligible for this video down here, but let's get out these 2, I guess. So this is one of the, I would guess, mixed authors that is in the jar, because I have these Violent Delights by Chloe Gong, because when it was published, it was a very hyped release. And oh, this is actually an Illumicrate copy. So no, these are books that I have actually received just because they're in subscription boxes. I thought that I'd actually got this one myself, but no, this one's the Illumicrate edition of these Violent Delights from 2020. I thought it was a little bit earlier than that. So this one, I did want it anyway, obviously, because I assumed that I bought it myself because I knew that it was a hyped release that was coming up. A lot of people were talking about it. That being said, when I got this out, I was going to be like, oh yeah, I've heard really good things about this. I don't think I have. I don't really know what the general consensus on These Violent Delights is. I do know that it is a like Romeo and Juliet or West Side Story kind of retelling. But then we also have Immortal Longings by Chloe Gong. This one is one of Chloe Gong's much more recent releases. Pretty sure this one's an adult book as well. Yes, it is from the July 2023 Adult Fairy Loot. Now, this one is inspired by Antony and Cleopatra. So these two actually, like, I know for sure, well, I'm pretty confident that they're not connected, aside from the fact that they are both Shakespearean retellings. So now I'm really torn. What's the actual plot of this one? This one has like a sci-fi element to it. So this is somebody who's entering a series of games like a tournament. It might be a fight to the death because the person who greets the victor at the end of the games is her uncle and she wants to kill him. And then we have another character who has entered the games because he will be able to keep his childhood love alive if he wins, and she's lain in a coma for a long time. And then this one is a historical fantasy. It's in 1926 in Shanghai. West Side Story. It's West Side Story. It is Juliet and Roma, who are from rival gangs and have fallen in love with each other. In this spectacular reimagining of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, debut author Chloe Gong brings readers on a heart-stopping journey of violence, passion, and star-crossed fates. So, you know what? In terms of plot, I don't really have a preference. I think I'm going to let the average ratings lead on this one. If I remember correctly, like I said, I don't know whether people really enjoy this book. Like, I can't remember whether the general consensus is positive, but I'm pretty sure a lot of people thought that this was pretty mid. So if that is the case, I would definitely rather go with These Violent Delights. I feel like I've read a lot of classic hyped YA in this video, which makes sense because when it's like super hyped and it's like the series of the year or one that people keep talking about, I generally make sure I have a copy myself, and then whether I get around to it or not is a completely different matter. So it does make sense why there would be a lot of those authors in my library that I hadn't sampled before. So in terms of Chloe Gong's books, Immortal Longings, I really like the US cover of this book, 3.53, so that's like a middling rating. It's not amazing. And These Violent Delights is a 3.81, decent, not fantastic, but decent. So with that in mind, I am going to go for These Violent Delights. It is actually the bigger of the two as well, which is unfortunate. At 439 pages, I have read a lot of YA in this that I actually, oh wait, no, the second book I read was Anna Huang, so that wasn't YA. But the books that I've enjoyed the most have been young adult, and actually I've only DNF'd adult books in this one, so maybe picking the YA from Chloe Gong is the correct choice in this instance. We are going to ignore the fact that my library is still a building site. I am hoping to finish up the structural work on my project today so that I can put a lot of this stuff away, because right now I don't know how the end of this video is going to wrap up because I can't get to the stacks. I don't know how many books are in them. I can't get to the shelves where I've shelved some of the books that I've read for this video, so I'm hoping that I can finish up the structural stuff, and then it's just like painting and stuff that needs doing, so I can put some of the stuff back where it belongs and gain access to the other half of the room. And it'll also make vlogging a little bit easier. I don't mean to be coy about the project as well, but I am making a whole video on it, and it is going to benefit Shelve It or Scrap It. I don't know how yet, like to what degree, but it is somewhat going to benefit Shelve It or Scrap It, and I'm really excited about it. At this point, I'm now 4 days into it though, and it is starting to grate on me. Like, I want this video done, and instead of reading and editing, I've been spending my time drilling and nailing. So hopefully I can still get everything done that I need to, because once I lock into a project as well, like I truly lock in. But right now I'm here to talk to you about These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong, which I'm now, my desk is like piled high with stuff as well. Like, I'm living in a nightmare. But I'm 160 pages into this, which I think is about a third of the way through. And I have mixed feelings about it so far. I started off thinking that it was like very overwritten. The first chapter was an adjustment period because it was like really heavy on the description. But as I carried on gone into it a little bit, I kind of got used to it, and I actually started to really enjoy the writing style and really absorb myself in the story. The problem that I'm having right now is that I have just switched to the audiobook this morning for like an hour while I was DIYing, and I don't like the audiobook of this one. I don't like the narrator's voice and her tone. I don't think she's really bringing the story to life, and we do have quite a few side characters in here that are like cousins of Roma and Juliet that I'm struggling to keep track of in the audio, because I don't feel like the narrator is differentiating between the characters and their voices, even when we're reading from Roma's perspective over Juliet's. It's all the same kind of flat tone, and that is why it has taken me a long time to warm up to audiobooks. Now, you know, like I listen to them quite frequently. I dip in and out. I listen to some chapters and then read some physically to be a little bit more efficient when I'm reading. And the reason why it took me years and until like I want to say 3 years ago I rarely listened to audiobooks is because I don't want somebody to just read a book to me. Like, I want you to bring it to life. Like, give me a little something, and the narrator of this is giving me nothing. So I dip in and out of how much I'm enjoying it, whether I am reading it physically or whether I'm listening to the audio. So I need to find some time today to dive back into the physical copy or the ebook, because I have got an ebook copy on Libby and I'm reading it on my Kindle. Something that I did not expect from this was that it's kind of a sci-fi. I'm actually going to look this up on Goodreads and look at the tags, because I genuinely did not have a clue that this is more of a sci-fi than a fantasy. Now, I will say that whether it does actually turn out to be sci-fi over fantasy will depend on what the source of the problem is in this world. But right now it's giving sci-fi to me. So essentially, Juliet is a member of the Scarlet Gang. Yeah, they're just called the Scarlet Gang. And then Roma is a member of the White Flowers. They are both the heirs to their respective gangs, so they're quite important. And these gangs have always been at war. Now, 4 years, I think, before this book starts, Roma and Juliet had a thing. They were lovers. There was like an escalation of the feud between the gangs, and Juliet was sent away to Europe to study to get her out of the action and kind of protect her. Her father sent her away. So I'm guessing like the context, the subtext is telling me that this thing between Juliet and Roma ended badly, which I do think is due to the escalation in the feud, which resulted in a lot of the members of the Scarlet Gang dying, but also I think it was Roma's mother also died as well. So the relationship between these two is really fraught. However, right at the beginning of this book in the prologue, there is something that has come to Shanghai that is causing people to tear out their own throats. So this is actually a lot gorier and a lot bloodier than I ever expected it to be, and I'm kind of enjoying it. It's taking me by surprise, but I'm really enjoying like the actual elements of the plot in here, because essentially Roma and Juliet are doing their own investigations to try and figure out what is happening to these people. But the very first instance was a bunch of White Flowers tearing their own throats out and one member of the Scarlet Gang. So because it involves both gangs, they kind of have to team up together to figure out what's going on, but also without alerting their parents that is what they're doing, because obviously there's this big gang feud. They're not really supposed to be chummy pally while they figure this out. Now, I don't feel like this is a spoiler because it happens in the first 100 pages of the book, but what they eventually figure out is that there are actually, it's very early in the book that they start to get on this path, but there are these insects that are burrowing under people's skin and like lodging themselves in their brains, and that is the cause of the madness, which is why I'm saying it's more of a sci-fi than a fantasy. And I'm looking at the genre tags on Goodreads, which aren't the most accurate things because people just like throw things wherever and everyone calls everything young adult. But sci-fi is not on here. Like, we have retellings, historical fiction, which this seems to be set in 1926 Shanghai, not a fantastical version of Shanghai. There's actually not really any magic in here. The only thing that's fantastical are these insects, which to me signifies sci-fi. Now, like I said, it depends on the origins of these. If it is that somebody performed a satanic ritual and these demonic insects came forth, then that would make it fantasy. However, if they've been like genetically, biologically engineered somehow, that would make it sci-fi. Now, looking at the tags, I would assume that we are going to be talking fantasy, but it definitely like it feels like sci-fi to me right now, which is very interesting because I do really like sci-fi and I want to get into the origins of these insects. So yeah, I'm very interested in the plot right now. I don't really care about the drama between Roma and Juliet, honestly. Like, it's not interesting me at all. But the plot, the origins of these insects, and the writing style, I am liking. Audiobook, not so much. Would not recommend you go the audiobook route if you want to read this one. So I'm at my Kindle says that I'm at the halfway point of this, but I'm actually a little bit further. I'm on page 240 out of 440. And at the end of this book, there is like a little bit extra. There's quite a bit of acknowledgements actually, as well as an author's note that talks about the relevance of this book being set at the time it was in 1920s Shanghai and the political relevance of that. Unfortunately, I'm not going to get far enough into this book to read that author's note though, because I do think I am going to be DNFing it here. I have thought quite a bit about this because I actually do quite enjoy the writing style once I got used to it. And then I also really like the atmosphere that Chloe Gong is creating in this one. However, I am a little bit bored by the subject matter. Like, gang stories are not really for me. It's not something that I'm particularly drawn to. I know at least one more on my TBR that I want to read, which is the Olivia Blake one. Is It One for My Enemy? I'm pretty sure that is once again like two rival gangs and two people who fall in love across them. That's just off the top of my head. I don't remember the exact synopsis of that. And it's the romance element within that intrigues me. With this book, I don't really care about the romance, and I think it is because it is pre-established. Like, they had a thing 4 years ago. Now we're supposed to feel these tortured emotions and complex emotions that they have for each other because they kind of crossed that boundary once in the past and it didn't work out. So now they don't feel like they can trust each other because things ended very, very badly in the past. And having not seen that relationship, not even in flashback, it's only like been referenced, I just don't really care. Like, the characters are not shining to me in this book. They are not the standout element for me by any means. And I feel like while I am interested in the plot with the insects and getting to the bottom of that, the general politics of this time period, as somebody who isn't really a historical fiction reader, I do enjoy historical fantasy, but I typically enjoy it set in like the 1500s. I've specified before what it is that I know that I enjoy and have read more than once and enjoy, and it is the time period when Christianity was turning, like Europe especially, away from folklore and the gods that they previously worshipped and towards Christianity, and the kind of juxtaposition of that and moving into the modern religion of Christianity and the effect that that had on their culture and also the old gods and the folklore creatures. I love that in historical fantasy, and I also generally, as a historical time period, I love like the 80s and 90s, which calling that a historical time period actually blows my mind. But like a book that is set in a time period that is not present day, 80s, 90s, love it. I'm not at a point where I can call the 2000s historical fiction. I can't do it, and I don't think that's accurate anyway. The 1920s, it's not my vibe. You know, like I can appreciate some of the aesthetics of the 1920s. It's not something that I actively seek out. And then this topic of gangs warring and that whole kind of like gangster mall energy, it's also not something that I'm particularly interested in. Like, I don't have any interest in gangster movies or mob movies. Haven't seen Godfather. Don't read mafia romance. Like, well, I have dipped my toes into mafia romance and it's fine, but like as a topic of a romance, don't care for it. So I think that is kind of my disconnect with this, because while I am enjoying the world, while I am enjoying the writing, I don't care for the plot when we take it away from the immediate search for the source of these insects, why they're infecting people and what's kind of going on. So I just don't want to read it anymore. I would definitely be pushing through this for a 3-star unless it had a super explosive dynamic ending, which it might. I just don't feel like the ending is going to be anything so spectacular that it kind of turns me away from a middle of the road 3-star read. And this is the kind of 3-star where it's like I don't like as much as I like, to a point where like throughout the course of reading this I'm questioning, like, do I really need to read this? Why am I reading this? Couldn't I read something else? Which I can now, because I'm not reading this, and this is the last book for this episode. That does unfortunately mean though that I am going to be unhauling Immortal Longings, and that was why it was so hard for me to DNF this, because I think that Chloe Gong's writing style has promise. Like I feel like I could enjoy it if I got the right story for me. Immortal Longings, synopsis wise, like it seems okay. It's nothing that's like making me want to read it immediately. So I feel like I'm okay letting go of it. I mean, that is the rules of this challenge. The stakes were high for a reason. If I happened upon something else by Chloe Gong, or in a million years when I get control of my TBR, I'm able to read more things, maybe I'll pick up Chloe Gong again. But this one, just, I'm really sad as well because I think I really wanted to enjoy this book. I really wanted to, and it was just kind of fine. I don't need to waste my time with fine. You know, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to DNF those mediocre reads so that I can get to the good stuff on my TBR. So this means that I'm going to be scrapping these Violent Delights and also Immortal Longings. So I still can't really access the stacks. I can crawl over the sofa to get to them, but not in a way where I can really show you guys what's going on. Luckily, this is just like a slot for 2 hardbacks. So I'm just going to take 2 hardbacks off the top of the stacks and go shelve them upstairs where I'm taking these books from, and then we'll kind of revisit where we're up to. So I didn't have to crawl over the couch, actually. I could just about make it here. I am going to take these 2 because they're not anything that I'm like desperate to read immediately. So I guess they can languish on the shelves. I'm always torn because I don't want to put books that I like genuinely want to read soon, that I'm eager to read, on the shelves. Because obviously I tend to read a lot from the stacks, but I also don't want to put the books that I'm not as interested in on the shelves because they're just going to languish there forever. But I mean, I'll get to these one day, probably through Shelve It or Scrap It, but for now they're heading upstairs. So along with these Violent Delights, Immortal Longings is also going to be scrapped. I have Caraval here as well. With no access to my library, I'm just really like a trail of books behind me. And then down here, if I move Kylie Lee Baker out of the way for a minute, I can fit in Ties That Bind and Where Shadows Meet, and then hopefully Kylie Lee Baker will slide back on top. So on a wibbly wobbly bed is probably the worst place to juggle multiple stacks of books, but it is also the place in my house where the lighting is the best right now. So we're gonna roll with it. So to wrap up episode 16, in conclusion, I read or attempted to read a total of 7 books for this episode, which I think is still a considerable amount considering I was trying to avoid reading 10. And don't worry, I know that this video is not too shy of 2.5 hours. It's only just under 2.5 hours. So I have achieved my goal of making it shorter than last episode, but not really by much. At least I tried my best. But of these 7 books, 3 of them I have shelved. And the most surprising book of this entire video for me is This Poison Heart by Kayn Baron. And it's actually probably the book that I enjoyed the most out of all of them. I am still genuinely excited to read the sequel to this one, and it completely took me by surprise because preconceptions going into this, like I 100% thought that this was going to be a scrap. Turned out to be the favorite book I read. These 2 are not so surprising. These are books that have been on my radar for a long time that I expected to enjoy. Caraval, a little bit less than The Kiss of Deception. I knew there were some things about Caraval that maybe wouldn't work for me. I am glad that they did, however, and I'm excited to continue on with this one. And this is one that I've been excited about for a very long time, so I'm not surprised that I read it and I enjoyed it, though not to the degree that I expected. I expected it to be closer to a 4 or a 5-star read, if I'm being honest. You can hear the boiler firing up, which I know you can. It's because Curtis is aggressively doing the dishes downstairs, apparently. Finding a second of peace in this house is impossible sometimes. So the other 4 are ones that I scrapped. Only one of these I read in its entirety. This one I enjoyed enough to read more from Anna Huang, but I don't need physical copies on my shelves. And these 3 I sadly DNF'd. So we had a decent amount of DNF this episode in comparison to last episode where I hardly DNF'd anything, but we also had a decent amount of shelves as well, which is great. We're pretty much at a 50-50 split of things that I finished and shelved and things that I DNF'd, which ain't too bad. So in terms of the final statistics of what we shelved and what we scrapped for this episode, because we doubled the stakes, so I scrapped some things that I didn't even try, and I also shelved some stuff from the stacks to fill those gaps. I am not going to be including in the total of books shelved and scrapped. The books that were shelved that came from shelves to begin with, so it's not like I found them a home on a shelf, I just put them back where they came from, which I think is actually all 3 of the books that I read and shelved. So without these 3, in total for episode 16, I scrapped 9 books. And I shelved 5 books that came from the stacks. So I don't have access to the stacks right now. As I said, I can't get all of the cushions out properly to see what we've got going on there. But by my tally, 8 of the books that I've talked about in this episode were ones that came from the stacks, meaning that going into episode 17, or I guess actually to end episode 16, we should, if my maths is correct, which I mean it usually is, we should have 63 books currently in the stacks. Now I know that I have a stack of 10 books waiting to go right back in there from my May unboxing, and also the PR package that I received from Penguin Michael Joseph adds up to 10. They are going to be going into the stacks, but I am not at all concerned about it because I am pretty confident that thanks to my little DIY project, which is still ongoing but nearly done, fingers crossed, we should be starting episode 17 with less books in the stacks than we have right now, even given the fact that I have 10 to add in there. And that is because my DIY project is built-in alcove shelving. The alcove that is on the other side of the chimney breast from where my desk is, where I film, I have taken out the bookcase that was there and I have built shelves into the alcove. It has been a labor of love, and like I said, I'm making a full video on it. I technically am not gaining any shelves, but because it's not a bookcase, because the shelves are built into the alcoves, I'm gaining space on each side of where the shelf was. So in the video that I'm making on it, I'm going to tally up how many books I had on the shelves originally, like the original bookcase, and how many books I managed to get on the shelves when I refill them, when it's painted and it's done. But I anticipate an extra 3 to 5 books per shelf being able to be stored in the same place. So if that is the case, say I can get an extra 5 books per shelf on these new shelves, then that is going to reduce the stacks by 35. So I'm not sure exactly when you're going to see that video. I think I'm going to schedule it for some point in July. I am going to be away next month as well, so the next episode of Shelve It or Scrap It you may need to wait a little bit for. It is going to be a smaller episode. I think I have to read 7 books and I may start it before I leave, so you may get it sooner, but you are going to get that bookshelf video somewhere in between. So do stay tuned for that if you guys want to see, because it's going to have the bookshelf reorganization and stuff in it. I also know I have some stuff on my paperback shelves, especially that I need to unhaul. So we're going to do like a bit of a bookshelf reorganization as well in that video, all before we get into episode 17 of Shelve It or Scrap It. In terms of vlogs in general on my channel, the next one you're going to see is going to be a bit of a long weekend vlog where I'm hoping to read Dungeon Crawler Carl and also a little fantasy romance that's been on my TBR for a long time that I want to try. So also keep an eye out for that if you are interested. But aside from that, guys, thank you so much for tuning in for this episode. I do hope that you've enjoyed this one if you've made it this far. If you have, please don't forget to like if you liked it and subscribe if you wanna. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you'll go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.